Boy, we could do an entire psych episode on me alone, like all the weirdness that I have.
Have to add a strong caveat to that one that I am not providing any actual clinical services in the course of RantCast.
And that is a great transition there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to RantCast, the show about all the nerd and RL topics that run adjacent to Age of Sigmar itself. I am your benevolent host, the man with every opinion, achievement unlocked, Mr. Mephisto, and you are...
And I am Dr. Alexander Mylonas, a clinical psychologist.
And as you said, we are not giving actual psychological advice here on RantCast. We are just meandering through some topics and some interesting sort of like overlap, we see in like reality and some of those psychological implications with some factions and stuff like that. And we're also going to talk a little bit like the sort of the mental, quote unquote, the mental game of Age of Sigmar. You are chat gang. Thank you so much for joining us. You're part of the show too. Raceland Khan already with that Twitch Prime sub. Thank you so much, my friend. Raceland, best wizard or the best wizard, real quick?
Sorry. Which one is that?
Raceland, from the Dragonlance novels. He becomes the master of all time at some point.
Oh, well, I mean, that's pretty good, master of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he could just go back to him and be like, this other wizard out of time. There we go, bumped up in the rankings.
Well, because he starts out a red wizard essentially, and he ascends to like Raistlin the Black, and when he conquers this one tower, and he ends up beating some dude who he ends up himself being.
Oh, it's just some fun like paracausal time
stuff. Yeah.
On.
So like he defeats this other wizard who formerly was the tower, or like the tower head, and then in the over the course of that. Becomes it's weird, like he is his own grandpa or whatever.
He was the boss of the tower the whole time.
He was the boss of the tower the entire time.
I have some familiarity more with like Forgotten Realms D&D type.
So Elminster is best wizard then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kind of. I feel like he's best wizard, but in a way where you're like, oh, I guess Dumbledore is like the best wizard just because he's the oldest one around and like the highest level.
See, I just spent half a rantcast making fun of Harry Potter, and here you are like bringing in the Harry Potter riffs.
Don't tell anyone. That's the extent of my Harry Potter knowledge.
See,
I know there's a Dumbledore, and that's about it.
See, I said on last rantcast, and since someone did comment in the comment section on that video, I feel like I need to bring it up. I wasn't shitting on both Star Wars and Harry Potter. I was actually sort of commenting on them, like as just like these pop culture phenomenon, and not even like just like nerd movies or nerd culture. They're just this pure. Man, excuse me. I am getting ganked by my daughter here.
No, that's fine. I waited to do this until my wife was home. So otherwise, there would be a schnauzer right here in this part of the video, just wandering constantly around. Yeah, or trying to tear up the carpet in the basement, which would not be an improvement.
Oh, there we go. Mommy got her now.
But I think it is funny that if you don't show unvarnished, unbridled optimism for the thing the person loves, then you're shitting on it. It's very black and white thinking in fandoms. It's like, you don't completely love the thing I love, therefore you hate it.
Yeah, it's I mean, and that's the thing is like, if I don't love the thing you love in nerdery, then obviously like I'm wrong and I'm making fun of you by extension of it. Mm-hmm. No, and that's and the thing I said, the main thing I said about Harry Potter is that like it wasn't my generation. I'm just a little bit older than when Harry Potter was coming out, and so like it didn't resonate with me. That was by that time I was already on to like Chuck Palahniuk and like Cormac McCarthy and like American literature, Kurt Vonnegut. Like I had already gone past reading like, if Harry Potter had come out when I was in my Goosebumps phase, I'd fucking love it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think we're close in age because have the same feeling that like Harry Potter was just a little bit young when I was around. Like I was a little old. I was just slightly past the generation. So, but yeah, you're right. It's like you're gradually flipping through. Like, oh, I hear this Nietzsche fellow is interesting, or like, or this James Joyce guy has some interesting ideas, and other people are. And what's a Snape? I keep hearing about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, no, and I remember them like in middle schools when they came out, but my reading level was already like kind of above it. Although I did read a shit ton of Star Wars Expanded Universe. So while I'm making fun of Star Wars, I want you to know that I'm also kind of one of you. I just I don't consider myself a fan anymore, I guess. Like I think there's a burden of fandom. When you're a fan of something, it can undermine your own like sense of quality of that thing. Where you're just so happy that there's more of the stuff you love that you stop to like, you never objectively assess it. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's fun to love stuff. You know, this is why I constantly talk about being a shameless homer for like sports and like regional things for like no reason other than it's fun to have a rooting interest and be excited unapologetically about something. There's just there's a joy in that.
Yeah, my wife is a big college football fan, also because she roots for Ohio State, so that's easy for her. And I went to Rutgers, so I have very little interest in football, but I'll still be like, oh, how'd Rutgers do? And she'll usually ask like, do you really want to know? Because it's not good. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to know, but yay, sports ball that you like.
Yeah, sports ball. Woo. Well, and that's the thing is, like, I have a belief that sports nerds are the original nerd. They were just the socially acceptable nerd. They wear paraphernalia. They talk about the thing you don't care about or understand despite you. Like,
in great detail.
In great detail. Like, oh, did you hear, like, how about them Packers? Like, oh, yeah, that fourth down play. It's all the same as if I'm describing a game of Age of Sigmar to someone who doesn't know Age of Sigmar. It's the same.
I watched one of the Honest Wargamer. I watched Rob commenting on it, and it was like, oh yeah, this feels like someone commenting on a sports game, play by play. Like this seems like if I sat down someone who doesn't watch the game, who doesn't know the game, and they watch this, they could probably follow along and understand roughly what's happening.
Well, and there is an art to that. To casting, and I did do. Believe it or not, I did shout casting for a while with some fighting games. I was looking into doing some shout casting for Overwatch around the time that was coming out and getting popular. But I had been doing League of Legends shout casting.
League of Legends.
Yeah.
Spent many a long night on League of Legends.
Man, I'm reformed, as it were. I'm on the wagon. I'm not.
Same. Yeah, I haven't played it in years, but yeah.
I haven't
lost a lot of sleep in grad school to League of Legends.
I haven't played it in months, but that's good for me.
You've reached that point in like where you've gone past that fan point, and you still enjoy the thing, but you're not that fanatical about it. When you keep the game on your computer just so you can update it in case one of your friends says they'd like to play, but you haven't actually sat down and played in 6 months to a year.
Well, I mean that's why WoW. I have a WoW vanilla subscription right now. Is like technically I did the thing where I thought I was being frugal, and I bought several months so that I got the cheaper option. But like everyone lost interest in it after about a month. I thought it had staying power. I thought all my friends, it was just going to be, the year 2004 all over again, or whatever.
Right, yeah.
2005, whenever WoW came out. Like, I thought it was just going to be that again, and it wasn't. Like, we all ended up on different fucking servers.
Right, yeah, mistake number one, which is always a challenge, yeah.
But go on.
I do, but along that same generation, though, I do credit Warhammer Online, which lasted for a while, with actually helping to spark sort of my interest in Warhammer as a game, and really actually was the computer games of that sort of brought me into the sort of broader Warhammer sphere. So like, yeah, it's, you know, it's hard when your like friends are on different servers, or like you've lost touch with people and you've gone back to the game after a while. But then, you know, that can still have some lasting effects. There's still things you take away from that might pay off down the line.
See,
Being
that's
on
really
a podcast about Age of Sigmar.
right. No, that's cool. It's funny how like things are sort of cyclical and you know they sort of one thing leads to another, which does bring up a point. And man, I feel like I'm just gonna have to keep talking about this, even though there's no information on it. The old world, you know, my take, if you're familiar with it, is that you know, you have Total Warhammer, this awesome video game series, is driving interest toward the tabletop, and I think that it's sort of it's okay to give people a more direct sort of analog for Total Warhammer that they're going to recognize in this old world product. Even though I'm very much Age of Sigmar, I'm very, you know, this is the game I love for a reason. You know, I played Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but I loved the characters and the idea of it more than playing the actual game. I didn't like guessing distances and paying movement to wheel my cavalry and, you know, keeping track of higher ground, like bonuses and shit. Like, I didn't like that. You know, it always will be weird to me as a gamer when people bring up the realism in gaming argument. Like,
Right,
it's always really strange to me. I'm like, you know, there's a fucking dragon, right? Like, what realism do you go on?
Yeah, but realistically, how fast do you melt compared to a moon dragon or a star dragon?
Right.
The black dragon, we assume you don't melt; you just kind of become blobby.
Right.
So.
Right.
But I listened to the talk you had about that, and I think you made some good points there. It's good to have that quick way that someone can say, like, I'm playing Total War Warhammer, I'm loving it, I'm on my 5th Empire campaign, and I go to Age of Sigmar and I see some stuff that looks familiar, but like, where's Carl Franz? Where's you know, if I want to play shoot, I'm blanking on his name right now. The guy with the gold mask.
I missed the end times.
Chat, you'll cover me, chat.
Chat gang knows the guy with the gold mask.
Yeah, but you know, you these characters that you recognize, and you go to the setting, you're like, oh, those are clearly handgunners. Like, I get that, and like, oh, there's a Demigryph Knights, but like, none of the characters I became attached to are here, and like, none of the setting or the history. I don't recognize any of these names anymore.
Is it Balthazar Gelt again?
Gelt, there you go, Balthazar Gelt.
He's the man with no name, Balthazar Gelt, because I could never fucking remember it either.
Yeah, poor Gelt. Yeah, no, the entire Total War Warhammer Reddit would be furious right now.
Well, at me at Mr_Meph on Twitter with all your woes. Give me the algorithm heat. Yeah, so like, again, I'm happy it's going to exist for that, but again, they said 3+ years out. It feels weird to keep talking about a thing that is just a logo and 3+ years out. Screw Gelt, says Holy Hammerhern. Indeed. I'm glad Manfredo stabbed him. Or Fettuccine Manfredo, which is our new nickname for Manfred.
Oh, Jesus.
We're gonna get that shit shredded.
Well, not really poor Manfred, because he is a giant,
he
giant
sucks.
douche.
He sucks.
And one thing he also sucks in the game. Like, I have never at any point heard anyone say, oh yeah, I'm really thinking about putting Manfred in my list. Well, never. Well, like, there's a few things I never hear in Age of Sigmar, and that's one of them.
Oh man, Manfred's my favorite character on the tabletop.
Is he really? Oh, okay.
No, I'm being sarcastic. No, Legion of Night is just fine. And here's the hottest of hot takes. I don't think Vlad von Karstein should come back.
That's one of those tough ones of like, I like the show, and the show had a really good ending, but I kind of want to keep watching. But it ended really well.
It's like, yeah, it's just his story's done. Now Isabella, on the other hand, she should come back, shove Manfred's head up his own ass, kill him, and become the Mortarch of Night, and then we can have Isabella and like Neferata, like just like two like two vampire sister. Yeah, I know they're not real sisters, but just like leading the vampires. I think that'd be really cool. The Mortar.
I really thought she was going to be the Mortarch of Grief. I thought that would have been a really cool idea, that like Death is the faction that has the characters from the old world. Isabella has been grieving the loss of Vlad for millennia, and so now she wanders around with her vengeful ghost army, and they just stab stuff because she is like perpetually crying things to death. I thought it would have been a really cool take.
Yeah.
Olinder's not bad, and I don't blame them for going in like trying to
New
build
stuff.
some new characters in, but I just thought it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
but obviously Vlad is the Celestin Prime, so I mean his story's not over.
Well, is that the take? You've heard it here first. Vlad is the Celestin Prime.
That's the like most outrageous conspiracy theory that I support, even if I'm like one of two people who believes it. Yes, Vlad is clearly the Celestin Prime. He wears the helmet because he doesn't have a nose. And Sigmar knows people, no nose. I don't know if I can trust this guy. I don't know. I can't take him seriously.
Yeah. So okay, that's it's a very thin basis for a conspiracy, but I'll take it because Vlad's cool. No, Vlad's story is done. He can stay dead.
Yeah.
But you did raise a good point about like Death being a really good sort of segue to bring in these characters from the old world, because old mainstays could show up in Death factions, or this notion of a Order Death army down the line, would be something. I think there's a way that you could reconcile that. I mean, Nagash might not be happy, but then again, Nagash plays the long con, and so maybe it's all part of his plan in the end to subvert Sigmar, that soul thief. But
I mean, and one of the interesting things is we do have like multiple sort of trickster god options in the setting. So at any point, if it feels like, oh, we want to do this thing, but it doesn't really make sense, it's like, well, Tzeentch is a thing.
Yeah.
So, and Skaven are a thing. So just have them throw a wrench in it, and there you go. There's your justification.
Yeah, you're right. Tzeentch is basically Loki, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like sort of that sum all trickster god that just, and it doesn't matter if the plan doesn't make any goddamn sense or goes against his own interests. He does that shit anyway. Yeah. So you can always justify it.
Yeah, her lord of change, like, no, so that actually does. I drew the parallel between Loki, which is very much not Greek mythology, that's Norse mythology, but that actually like segues into like one of these like really basic topics we were actually kind of talking about off air, which is these sort of what you called these psych hypotheses on characters in the mortal realms, and we talked a little bit about like sort of the Greek influence on like elves. Like Elven culture is very much like a Greek tragedy just playing out. What was your how did you phrase it, and you want to take me through it?
Oh, that basically the entire Elven plot, actually from the old world into Age of Sigmar, is just like one giant case study of intergenerational trauma. And like it goes all the way back to Anarion, and it's still playing out today. Like thousands and thousands of years later, the like bullshit the elves went through then is still fucking with them even today. It's
cool because there is some cultural parallels, I think, between elves and like Greeks with the high society and culture and intellect and all these things that they value as they're very Greek, or very like sort of Greek Roman. Elves crying in their silk dresses, says Herner.
Yeah, I mean the entire like Ulthuan versus Nagaron thing is essentially like an allegory for Athens, Sparta, right? You have the one that's got sort of like the higher minded ideals, but doesn't always hold up to all of that, versus the one that like, oh, we can appreciate their strength, but dear God, is their society terrible? Like nobody wants to live there, but we get it, you're tough.
Right, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. That's actually really awesome.
So yeah, so I think there are some really interesting stories that I don't know if the writers meant it, and sometimes I've seen some stuff from the people who originated some of the earlier plot lines, and like some of it's inspired, some of it they're like, yeah, we pretty much ripped this off of Dune, whatever, it sounded good at the time. And so it's interesting to find those plot threads where you can say like, this actually holds up, this actually makes some sense. Like I as an expert in a certain field can say, yeah, this holds some weight to it.
Yeah, so you say that there's actually like sort of on the decision making and tracing the logic through it all, you could actually like, yeah, this holds up, this holds weight.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be flimsy at times for sure, because then you've got like different writers coming in who write characters like a little bit differently. So yeah, it's certainly not solid the whole way through, but there are certainly lines or themes you can look at and say like, okay, yeah, that makes a reasonable amount of sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you said this kind of carries through from the old world into the new world, and one of the big sort of new world happenings, the Mortal Realms happenings, is this notion of like Idoneth Deepkin, where Teclis basically took some souls. I think if I'm understanding the origin correctly, I read the book once and then never again. Teclis basically like took the souls from Slaanesh, tried to like rebuild elves, but they were sort of flawed. And like like their souls would like wither and deteriorate, and so they have to go raiding souls and stuff like that. And now Teclis is just like, yeah, about that was nice, but bye, and just like leaves Idoneth Deepkin to suffer.
For some reason, I just reminded of a Mystery Science Theater movie that they had, where Peter Graves, notorious B-movie actor, makes like these giant man-eating locusts, and he has a line hours deep into the movie where like the locusts have overrun massive parts of the country and like probably killed millions of people, and at one point he goes like, oh, I feel partly responsible, and they point out like, in a way you feel responsible, you literally made them. Like there's no way you could be more responsible for this. and I kind of feel like that's Teclis. Like someone at some point must be like, Teclis, have you met the Deepkin? They've kind of wiped out the entire coastline of Akshi. And he's like, I feel a little responsible.
Like a little.
Like, maybe. But I don't know. They moved out. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. They turned 18, they moved out, and now it's their life, man.
Yeah. But the Idoneth, I think, are really interesting, because tapping into this idea of this like intergenerational trauma, we've got, one of the earliest ones is the demon invasion of Ulthuan, where Anarion is like, oh, literally we're all dying. I have to become the incarnation of the war god because my whole family is dead and I've got no other option, so I'm going to go for broke. And like we can see different things that stretch out from there, and then literally they all get eaten by Slaanesh. Is like, well, you want to talk about a trauma,
right? Being digested by the god of excess for basically like several millennia before you're spat back out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you just happened to be there because you were getting digested slowly because you were at the bottom of the pile, if I remember right. Because the Idoneth are the souls that were like protected by Mathlan until the very last moment when Slaanesh was like, oh yeah, people live under the water too. I should go eat them. And so like Teclis gets his share of the souls. He pulls them out. He's trying to reform them, and through his memories of like the golden days of high elf society, he's telling them tales of like the gleaming, dragon princes and armor and all this stuff. And somewhere along the way, he realizes like, oh, these guys are they're a little fucked. Like something's a little wrong with them. And he decides, and I agree strongly with Alex Gonzalez that this is the wrong play. He decides, well, the best way to get to the bottom of whatever this traumatic thing is that I sense in them is to ruthlessly interrogate them until I find out everything.
So this is the worst trauma counselor ever bit, where you
Teclis is the worst trauma counselor in the mortal realms.
Yeah.
If you are suffering a mental health issue, maybe don't go to Teclis.
Don't go to Teclis.
As it turns out, actually, Gloomspite might be the better option for you.
Yeah, you mentioned that Gloomspite have like probably the most progressive mental health care. Could you explain that to me? Because I'm just like, I didn't want to know about it off air. I'm like, I need to hear this live in front of the in front of the chat gang here.
Yeah, I need to go back and reread exactly how it works, but progressive insofar as they have a mental health system. So the bar is low,
right.
Set, but the Gloomspite have this, and I think Scraggrot's the one who instituted this. So he's their like, I don't know, Bernie Sanders essentially, and comprehensive healthcare for all. His comprehensive in this case being he collects madmen and madwomen and like insane prophets from around the realms. People who clearly are off their rocker.
Right.
He gathers them all into what's essentially an asylum. It's also a cave, I think, under the ground. And then he hits them with his staff and infects them with fungus. and then listens to their mad rantings in order to help him predict where the bad moon is going to be. But he keeps them contained, keeps them safe. They have a place where and medicated, right? Yeah. They have a place where they're accepted, and the only downside is you get taken over by a brain-eating fungus. So
right. I mean, that's not that bad. Although, I mean, in reality, we've done, and Believer says they have the best drugs. This is true.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Very fungus heavy on the drugs, though.
We've actually done studies on like mushrooms or the chemical in there, and like depression and anxiety. And you might actually be able to speak a little bit to some. Are you familiar with any of those studies?
There's been some early research, and I haven't delved very much into this because as a psychologist, I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't prescribe. So I'm familiar with some aspects of tropic medication, some research going in there, but not as much as a psychiatrist would be. But
right.
We've seen some early results. There's been some tests with like low doses of LSD or low doses of whatever the compound is in psilocybin and in those sort of magic mushrooms. And there does seem to be some effect on depression and on mood and things like that. Is it enough for me to turn around to my clients and be like, you should do shrooms?
Just do
shrooms would really help.
Yeah, you've got some...
I would not recommend shrooms. But if you're in the mortal realms and you're a mad raving lunatic,
right.
You've been cast out by your society, Gloomspite, have an open door policy. I hope you don't have claustrophobia.
Is he like is Scragger is he like a racially progressive too in that like, oh yeah, humans that are tripping balls like it's not just like Gitz and goblins and shit?
Yeah, right. No, I think he probably started with Gratz, but then he opened his doors to everyone eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, humans, elves, there might be a dwarf in there, but they don't really seem to suffer mental illness in the same way as other people do.
They just get angrier.
Like, they're just perpetually grumpy, I think, is how they handle mental illness. So like, I don't know. Maybe he might have some dwarves. So
basically, like that, dwarves have used the Andrew J.V. Heggie method, which is drinking and being grumpy all the time. So
right, yeah, so, yeah. They've taken a very Western approach to it. We're just going to drink about it and grumble. And we haven't seen very many dwarven women, so luckily we get to hopefully out some of the other less fun aspects of that approach.
Right. Some of the consequences of that approach might be.
Right. Domestic abuse is what we're talking about here. There's a reason why this is not a good approach, everyone.
Right. And then so yeah, that's a
Mm-hmm.
fantastic take on Gitz. I don't really like necrolepsy. Am I a dwarf? Like that
you too may be a dwarf, but the real question is, can you grow a beard?
See, I'm working on mine right now, and by working on I mean I stopped shaving because I
that is the first step, essentially.
I don't shave in the winter, but I work outside, so it's just like you let the scruff protect your face, right? No, I think that'd be the first thing I have in common with dwarves, because I am of a proper height at 6 foot even,
See, I feel like 6 foot is tall for dwarf.
Yeah.
It's like you're not at the unnecessarily tall as has been making its way around Twitter lately, but I think at 6 foot they're like, do you need to be that tall? Do you need to have doorways that go that high?
Yeah.
I don't know that you do.
Well, I mean, they've got to be compensating for something with those like the huge doorways, yet their short stature.
Yeah. It's like, now I'm just trying to understand. You're 5'2" at best, and your door is 5'20". Why? What are you putting through the door that needs to be that big? And the dwarf just looks at you like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
You're not on my level, bro.
Yeah. Starts pulling out the like pocket grudge book to be like, it's gonna go in the bigger one later. This is just the transfer pad.
They have huge weapons. Yeah. I don't know, man. See. When I was growing up, I actually I liked like elves a lot. There's a joke that in Rifts, which is a tabletop RPG, there's a Rifts conversion book. It's sort of if you're not familiar, it's a post-apocalypse setting. Essentially, magic is like dormant on Earth. And then there's like this huge golden age in like the year 3000 or something like that, where like medical advances happen. You know, we have super soldiers, and we're finally developing mechs and laser weapons and stuff like that. But then another Cold War starts because of this golden utopian period. All the empires get sort of jealous of each other, and they start having this Cold War, worldwide Cold War, and then they detonate like nukes. And what this actually ends up doing is it awakens the ley lines, which are the magical like ley lines. And so like basically the planet says, "Oh, you think your explosions are sweet? Here." And so there's like this magic apocalypse where all the ley lines just explode, tear holes in reality called rifts, and all these like demons and monsters and fantasy races and just like crazy shit come pouring through the rifts and flood Rift's Earth with this sort of Dark Ages period, setting mankind back. And then so this is like Rifts is a sweet ass just setting. It's one of the coolest settings in all a tabletop RPG. Not unlike the Mortal Realms, really, when you think about it. Blowing up the world that was, and then we get a sweeter world. You know, shots fired at you old world fans. But like
old world, our stuff is just more interesting.
It's just cooler. Sorry, blowing up worlds is the coolest. Worked for Mad Max. It worked for Rifts. But yeah, so the conversion book then says like there's about 200 elves on Rift's Earth. The rolling joke in my group of friends growing up was that there's 200 elves in Rift's Earth, and they're all Andrew's player characters. Because I made a bunch of elves back in the day.
Yeah.
But I did go on.
I could see that being like there's 200 elves on the whole planet, and somehow 3 of them are in our fucking party. How did this happen?
Right. And then, you know, you just like the more you play the game, the more you realize that number was a lie in the conversion book, because they'll have a city where they're like, there's a population of elves of about 100, and then, you know, like, and then so they give the like race breakdowns of towns and stuff, and then they'll have like 100 elves in them. I'm like, okay, so you lied to me about how many elves were on Rift.
Yeah, right. It's like, well, there's 100. Milwaukee has the highest elf per capita, apparently, type of thing going on.
Well, actually, the Midwest is the magic zone.
Oh, is it?
And so it's like uninhabitable because it's just like rampant magic energies. So like Wisconsin is just all ley lines, and like Milwaukee is like a demon city or something like that.
Oh wow.
Or no, Chicago's a demon city. It's just like a whole city of demons.
Closer.
And then like Wisconsin is just like this Fallout like magic explosion wasteland, which is pretty funny. Yeah, so I mean it's a great system. But I outgrew my elf. Where this is all going is I outgrew my elf like love. I did outgrow it. And clearly I outgrew dwarf.
I think there's an elf to dwarf continuum. And I think for a lot of people, as you get older, you actually start to identify more with the dwarves than you do with the elves.
I think that's what happens, yeah.
Yeah. I'm firmly on the elf end of the continuum. So as I've gotten older, I still appreciate them, which explains why I started with them in Age of Sigmar. But yeah, there's definitely parts of like, yeah, sometimes I feel like I just want to handle my problems by drinking and grumbling about it. And that sounds like a really dwarf thing to do. So I kind of get it. Also, shooting my problems with a cannon also sounds like that would be helpful.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, see, but like, I mean, there is something admirable to the way the elves deal with their shit, which is like, you know, they have like the sort of like they want to magic it away, which is respectable too. Like if I could,
elves are definitely the like I could solve this problem by just getting out of my chair and walking across the room, or I could break the laws of physics with magic, which might invite demons into the area, so I don't have to grab my water bottle or get the TV remote.
You're right, elves are sweet. You're right, elves are awesome. Man, I'm the guy who, like, if I had one cantrip from D&D, it would be Prestidigitation or Mage Hand.
Right.
And I would never do anything ever again. That's if I knew one spell. If I knew one basic spell, I'd just be like, well, guess I just live in my chair now. Like, Mage Hand is just like, I just can't. I gotta reach that, like, bottle in the fridge. Just like, it's out of range. I guess it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, or like, oh, I threw that tissue across the room and it landed next to the garbage can. I could go over there and pick it up, or I
Mage
could
hand.
mage hand.
Mage
Yeah,
hand.
mage hand.
Like when we play all these fantasy games and like you have like spells like Hand to Dust on Nagash and,
Right.
and you know, pick a Tzeentch spell that's just a flamethrower and you're like, these are really awesome. But then if you come back to like practical reality, just having Mage Hand would be the coolest thing ever. Like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I don't know how many problems I could solve with Fireball, with just like actual Fireball. Not as many as I could solve with Mage Hand.
Yeah, there's really not that much call for lighting things on fire in your day to day. I mean, depending on what you do for work, maybe,
Right.
but like 99% of jobs do not need to set something on fire on a daily basis.
Right.
But
I mean,
like picking stuff up from across the room, I mean, that's pretty generally applicable.
yeah, that's great.
No.
Yeah, you just heard an argument for why Mage Hand is actually the best spell.
Laziness is the argument why
Right.
Mage Hand is the best.
Right.
But speaking of elf logic, though, one of my favorite bits of like random lore from the old world. So my favorite unit in the game is the Blackguard, and like I love them in Warhammer Online. When Christian Weir introduced me to Age of Sigmar, I was like, "What faction are the Blackguard?" And he was like, "About that." But they're what I started with, you know, and I love the models and I love them. And part of what I really like about them is their philosophy from their training in the old world. And basically they were taught, if you haven't cut it into at least 3 pieces, it's not dead yet. And when you hear that, you're like, oh, that's, you know, overkill, like heavy metals type of shit. Like, yeah, kill it and cut it into 3 pieces. But if you think about demons, actually that starts to seem like a really solid philosophy to have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I cut you in half. There could be 2 more of you. Might as well go for 3.
Right. Yeah, that's actually really funny, like the problem solving, elven logic. Yeah, the more I sort of reassess elves again. I think I still favor elves over dwarves, chat. Sorry. Like I got older and like I used to hate dwarves growing up. I just didn't like them. Gimli was a freaking meme. Like they just their stats kind of sucked in the Palladium books I played. Like they sucked. And they tended not to be able to cast magic at all, which was just magic is the coolest. So I mean, disqualified.
Yeah, just sorry. Yeah, that +1 strength sounds really, but no magic, huh?
Yeah, no magic. Who needs strength when you can unmake reality?
Right. Yeah, I don't need to be strong if I just make you not strong.
Yeah,
ever.
Or teleport you into the center of a sun. Like, where's all your strength now?
There's a bit in. I know that people tend to pan the Realm Gate Wars books because they do kind of fall into that, like, I forget what the term was that was used, like battle porn type thing, where it's just like men in armor smashing each other with big weapons. But there's a hilarious bit buried in the Stormcast assaulting a like Tzeentch fortress that has Galmarons in it, where they summon a Mutalith vortex beast and it just starts like messing with reality, and one of the Stormcast just gets turned into a potted plant.
Polymorph.
That's just it. Like, he goes to attack something and just boom, there's a fern.
Polymorph, baby.
That's how Tzeentch handles the problem. It's like, there we go.
Yeah, we had
better this way.
Actually, one of our characters in our famously busted 3.0 game, we had an Incantatrix do chain baleful polymorphs. And so like it would cast and everyone into a potted house plant. That was always the joke, is you're a potted house plant. And so we had a Baelor that we were just walking around that was a potted house plant waiting to turn it back into a Baelor. Because you're gonna roll those ones to save, baby. Like, so that was a go ahead.
In the meantime, you're just harvesting him for spices for your like.
Yeah, it's like a basil plant or something like that.
It gives the food a real kick. It does come out a little weird, but you know, it's worth it. Worth it for just flavor.
Man, that was a good campaign. The whole point of it was to just make the most bent characters you could, and then like arena fight them with the most bench shit our GM could come up with. It just
Right.
it was the type of D&D that put hair on your chest.
Right, yeah. The type of thing where you look at the forums and someone's like, I made a giant who can throw the moon while standing on it. I think the system might not work.
We had a
someone else is like, no, the system does work. It works really well, actually. I'm gonna do that.
See, yeah, I don't need you to come at me with real physics in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like we talked about if you had enough strength and you sat in your chair, could you pick yourself up and just like fly? Like you just hear the Jetsons noise, like as you like fly around in your chair. Man.
So and to realize that at a high enough strength, you're not lifting yourself in the chair. You're just lifting the planet and rearranging it under you.
Right. The monk that could spring attack from the moon was one of the ones we read.
He takes a little bit of damage on the way down from the atmosphere, but otherwise it's pretty handy.
No, man, slow fall.
There you go. That's when Traveler starts to break into it. I don't know if you're familiar with Traveler, but it's like it can get much more like crunchy sci-fi.
Okay.
And so I could imagine someone from that coming over to D&D and being like, did you account for atmospheric drag when your monk was coming down from the moon? And the other player being like, I made a monk who can jump to the moon. I didn't think about oh, all right, show me the table. What am I gonna?
Yeah, the table. Well, and that's the thing is like you get too about the numbers, and then like you kind of the fun gets buried when it's about reality. Like, look, terminal velocity damage is 20d6. That's just what they say. Like, and they cap it. It like it's clean. You know, sometimes rules just need to be clean. They don't need to be realistic. Again, that circles all the way back to my take about the old world. Is like sometimes rules just need to be clean. They don't need to be realistic.
Right. It's like flanking is fine as a mechanic when you're doing something like Total, where it calculates it for you, and like you don't have to be there being like, so you have to have your defense and then add my charge bonus, and then depending on how many ranks I get into, it's like, no, just don't. It's fine for that. Don't have us as the players have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, we'll manage it just from hit and wound. We have a hard enough time there.
Right. And that's the thing is like it's there's so many other things to complicate a game that you play in 3 dimensions with measuring the way we do Age of Sigmar. You don't need to also complicate the math, right? So
this is the perspective of someone who I appreciate that you're following through on your commitment to have more 1 in 4 players on your podcast, because that's what's happening right now. So maybe that's the perspective you're getting right now.
Is that what it is?
that might be it. Yeah, it's like pulling from the 1 in 4 players right now. They're saying, please don't do flanking. We can't track it.
I think as former mathlete, keep all the math out of my games, please, and thank you. Yeah, I had a 32 in my ACTs in math. I still don't want to do it in a game in real time.
Yeah, right. Just because I can do it does not mean I find it entertaining.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. Like, So yeah, and then so continuing on with the psych hypothesis. So yes, chat, we did just take 45 minutes to make fun of the old world yet again.
as a caveat to everyone, the old world is going to be a lot of fun for whoever's interested in it. I'm glad that it exists, and I'm really happy for them. I don't want anyone to feel like we don't like your thing as much, so you don't deserve it. No, by all means, go have a great time. And if you're like a diehard old world player and you ever get interested in Age of Sigmar, come on over. We'll play a game. If you don't like it and you want to stick with the old world, great. Have a grand time. That's fantastic that it's there for you as an option.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the way I feel about everything except Harry Potter.
Allegedly. So many subscriptions are going to be lost at this rate. All 5 of them that you have right now are going to be lost.
Yeah, they're all gone. My quest for 1,000 on YouTube is just hamstrung. Like, can't get to 1,000 subs now. It'll never happen. I made fun of Harry Potter once.
I didn't realize you were taking a roguelike approach to that. Of like, every time I get near 1,000, I start over and then get better again. What can I insult this time to reset the clock?
Yeah, reset the clock. That's how you get good, man. Reps. You get good with reps.
I only need to get to 1,000 once.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So another one was you actually this take here is one that I think is really cool. Is you talk that chaos gods are great metaphors for like the pros and cons of emotion.
Right, absolutely. So when I do a lot of work with anxiety. I specialize in working with anxiety, which is essentially fear, and there are a few basic emotions that we all have. They're part of the human package. They're cross-cultural. Like research has held up consistently. We're just born with these emotions. And the Chaos Gods actually map pretty well onto some of those really basic emotions. And every emotion, we often phrase them as like positive and negative emotion, but they're not really. They have pros and cons. They all have a purpose. Even some of the ones we tend to malign, like jealousy, actually, they does have a positive aspect to it. It's just hard to see when you're caught up in it. And so the Chaos Gods, I think, are this great metaphor for like an emotion that we can see some of the pros of it, and we can also see how, at its most intense, it's real bad. It's real bad.
Yeah. So like actually, man, I can't remember if it was like a podcast or if I was reading I read a lot of like weird essays or articles in journalism, in like various journals and stuff. One of them was actually talking about how, God, I feel like it was a podcast, how depression is like, I'm really pretty open about it. It's kind of a point of pride for me to be open about my mental health, as a community member and everything like that. I want people to know that like I'm a guy who's had his struggles with mental health. My mom was bipolar diagnosed, manic depressive, depending on it goes back and forth what the prominent parlance is on it, but she was bipolar.
Sure, yeah.
And she self-medicated heavily. She would go on and off of various prescriptions. She actually did get prescribed lithium in the 90s, that so when Nirvana came out with the song Lithium, I knew exactly what it was about. Like,
right, yeah.
So I'm very open. In other words, I'm very open about it. I kind of struggle, but like I was reading naturally, as someone would with depression, reading an article about depression, and it basically said something along the lines of depression must be useful because evolution has continued to select it to stay in our species. Like,
yeah, it's and my apologies to everyone. I do cough from time to time. I still have a lingering cough from a cold. But on this topic, yeah, there is potentially some truth to that. From the research we've done on people going through depressive episodes, they do occasionally actually do better in certain domains when they're in the midst of a depressive episode. So, for instance, sometimes people who are depressed actually are able to analyze and like collect data from the environment fairly well. They're not great at interpreting it. They tend to interpret it in a very negative and pessimistic way, but they do pick up on things that someone who is not as down or is not feeling depressed at the time might actually have missed.
Yeah, I think
so. It's
Go on.
So it's a matter of trying to balance out some of those aspects and also taking an accepting approach to it, that there are everybody has ups and downs. There's some depression that is just normal depression that we all feel, and for the people who do have these more severe depressive episodes, trying to help them take approaches to it that's not doesn't just demonize it. It's like, oh, you have a problem. Well, no, it's a part of your experience and a part of what you go through. So how do you try to find some aspects of it that you can view in a more accepting, more compassionate way, instead of just being really critical towards yourself or feeling like you're worse or less than because you have this thing.
Right. Yeah, that goes into my visibility take, where like accepting it a little bit, and then just this is a state of being currently, and then there will be another state of being following that, and like let's just kind of get through it type thing. But no, back to the point of chaos. Like, have you mapped out which gods are which emotions? Are they all kind of a ball of each? Like, how's that broken down?
Yeah, so the way that I was thinking about them, I did kind of map, and some of them are a little bit easier.
Sorry, you cut out
basic
there.
emotions.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Some of them are easier, I think is what you're saying. Some of them are easier to map.
Yeah, some of them are easier because they map closer onto some of those more basic emotions, which are just a little bit more obvious. Ones like Tzeentch and Slaanesh are a little bit trickier because we start to get out of some of that basic emotion, but I think still works pretty well. The same concept still applies. So you take Khorne, for instance, and Khorne is pretty obviously anger. Like,
right.
It's not hard to see that Khorne is anger, right?
Right.
And so the benefit to anger is that anger energizes us. It makes us want to confront the threat, to fight back, to defend ourselves when we feel violated or feel hurt. But anger also is a really bad judge of what we should do with all that energy.
Right.
And so
well, I mean, you build a skull throne, obviously, is what you do.
Right, yeah. When you reach the point where you're racking up the skull count, then you maybe just let anger run the show for. But we could see how a person would be sort of attracted to Khorne. They feel disenfranchised, they feel hurt, they feel powerless. And so what attracts their attention? And it's the person who feels powerful and who's more powerful than Khorne, the guy who can punch a city out of the sky if he feels irked by them. In a way, also speaking of like where some of this goes awry, Khorne's also an interesting metaphor for actually identifying with the abuser when you're an abuse victim, which is actually something that we do see from time to time.
Right. So a little bit of the Stockholm syndrome, right? Like the.
Yeah, it's not quite Stockholm syndrome. I think the term for it, and I'm pulling from real like psychoanalytic, which is not strongly my area, but I think reaction form kind of the idea that I see that you are the strong one and you are the abuser, and I hate that you abuse me, but I appreciate that you're powerful. So maybe I start to emulate you so I can also be powerful, even though I hate that you hurt me in the process.
This is a little bit of the cycle of violence we often see, like in kids growing up in like abused homes. Basically, they're whoever the abuser is or that source. They're like they usually abused at home, and then they go to school, and classically they become the bully or they continue that cycle of that cycle. That's actually really cool. So Khorne is your abusive stepdad.
Yeah, exactly. And as an aside, he's your abusive dad who, when he finds out that you beat the shit out of him, that's the time you get approval.
Oh, yeah, because he rewards you for then going on and completing the cycle or continuing the cycle.
For being violent. So that's when you get the approval. And actually we see that in homes where violence is actually either normalized or is a way that you gain approval from an authority figure, that perpetuates that cycle of violence and does increase the likelihood that, say, a kid will be a bully or get into relationships where they're aggressive or an abuser.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Khorne's your anger gone amok. But we can also see at a lower level, if you don't get that far, how Khorne attracts like the warriors who want the honorable fight, who want to like stand up for themselves or want the power to right a wrong. Khorne attracts you to that. But then at some point you realize you're actually now the guy that other people feel powerless against.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens in stages. It's a bunch of gray areas.
Right on. We'll touch on that in a little bit, casual here.
Sure.
The Four Kings concept here. But so that's Khorne.
Yeah. Nurgle is sadness, which we associate with depression, and part of sadness, where sadness plays an actual positive role, is that it forces you to actually reflect on what's going on. You may not feel great about it, but it actually forces you to sort of take account of what's happening and actually connect with that, to connect with the fact that you are feeling hurt, feeling down, feeling disappointed. And if you take an accepting approach towards that, to say, it's okay that I'm sad, it's okay that I feel down right now, there is a solace that can come from that. But when you wallow in it, when you start to really just sink into that deep sadness, into that depression, then you get into this entropy, this period where just like you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation, and things start to decay and fall apart. And that's kind of where Nurgle plays that out.
So that's really Go on.
And that's where there's that weird juxtaposition of acceptance while everything is going to shit.
That's really funny.
But Nurgle actually sometimes literally going to shit.
Right. It's literal. I mean, that's the beauty of metaphor, right? Is we can go really.
You can stretch it and abuse it as much as you want. You can
stretch it out really, really far. So it's interesting because the quote unquote like the Godfather, Papa Nurgle, he's. I'd love to see the breakdown of people's like favorite chaos gods, but I feel like Nurgle is one of the more memed and like liked one by the community abroad, just because like from a meme standpoint. And I wonder if there's some sort of like resonant like acceptance there, where like everyone loves Nurgle because like we're probably not all a lot like Khorne. We're probably a little bit more like Nurgle, where we live sedentary lives traditionally as the nerd trope, right? And,
right. Yeah. Yeah, and he's the only one who seems to be having a good time, while everyone else is having a terrible time. And part of that, I think, how I might metaphor, who you might meet that reminds you of Nurgle. If Khorne's your angry stepdad who, only likes it when you beat other people up, Nurgle are like your friends who are only happy when you're as miserable as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Man.
And so, yeah, anytime, and probably many people have had this experience of having a friend that you realize when you're down, when you're not feeling well, they meet you in that and they can join you. But whenever you try to claw out of that, whenever you're trying to make things better, it seems like they're not actually really able to engage you with that. And so there's that real challenge there of my loyalty towards this person who also doesn't really seem to grow or grow with me.
Right.
And what do I do about that?
Right. Man. Yeah. Drake Aaron here says, well, I'm sure Gorka Morka is also having a ton of fun.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. There are a few other people who are having a good time too. Maybe in a different way, a different approach.
People can grow really attached to their depression. Nurgle is like being joyous in that manic self-abandoning matter. No, I mean, for like, so my vice, my main struggle is often with depression. I will not surprise anyone to figure out like exactly what cliche. It's very linear. It follows like a certain path. But for a long period of time, I felt awkward when I wasn't depressed. I didn't know, like, so much. I don't want to say so much my identity, but like it was very comfortable to be depressed. It was what I was used to. So much so that I didn't, like, I would, if I wasn't depressed, I would find ways to make myself depressed again because I couldn't cope with not being depressed in a weird sort of way. Like I wasn't used to being happy. Like my default setting wasn't neutral. It skewed depressed. And so like maybe I was feeling the Nurgle love a little more than I should have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that I encounter with where they will, go into a situation and then we'll talk about it, we'll process it, and they'll say, yeah, I felt really weird, and then I realized later because I wasn't afraid. And I'm so used to being afraid in so many situations that I didn't understand why I felt weird, and it was because I felt not afraid, maybe even happy, and I'm just not used to that.
Right. Just and just to reset it a little bit, we're not giving any advice or any Alex here is a doctor. You said your specialty is an anxiety. We're not giving you any like medical advice here. If you there are people that if some of the topics we land on, we're doing it from a lighthearted, fun, metaphoric sort of discussion. But if you do find some of this resonating with you, there should be resources in your area to reach out to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I over the internet airwaves, I cannot give anyone any resemble solid, clinical advice. But if you are finding any of this is bringing up any challenging material for you, if this is reminding you of things that are difficult, or somehow through this discussion you feel like, oh, maybe I want to talk to someone about some of these things, right. Absolutely, I would encourage that. And if you need help trying to figure that out, trying to figure out how would I go about that process, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to try to just give you some pointers on how to get connected. But I can't do that for you. I can't be the one to help you with that.
Right. Yeah, and we're in an exercise of giving personified shape to AOS deities. That's really what we're doing here.
Right. Yeah. So somehow, if that strikes a chord with you and you need, feel free to reach out, and I'll try to do what I can. But again, I can't do anything clinically for you.
All right. How many phases do I recommend for your average physical? So phases. Well, you got the shooting phase, which is probably peeing in a cup. Do you pee in a cup at a physical? I don't remember.
It depends on if you're having tests done.
Okay. Yeah. So
if you're just going in for generic thing, they may or may not have you do that. Same with blood draw. If you're getting the full physical, yeah, you're probably.
Yeah. You've got a shooting phase. So there's certainly a shooting phase. The hero phase, you talk to your doctor.
Yeah, hero phase is the initial, or actually filling out the paperwork.
Filling out the paper, yeah. Spending your command points to fill out those damn paperwork, yeah.
Yeah, I filled it out online, and now I'm filling it out again on paper. And you're probably going to make me fill out the same information again when I leave. Do I have to? I have to. Okay.
So it's the Slaanesh command points of the medical world.
So you guys invested heavy into redundancy, didn't you? All right.
So Slaanesh, actually, that brings up. So where does Slaanesh fall in our sort of?
Slaanesh, I think, kind of maps a little bit onto joy, actually, of all things. And granted, the way that they phrase Slaanesh is that Slaanesh is really an emotion as much as Slaanesh is the concept of excess, is right. How they kind of tap into it. But if we were to map it onto an emotion, for the sake of argument, we could map it onto joy. And joy, as much as we, really value it, and we would think like, oh, joy, what could possibly be wrong with joy? It makes you an idiot. It makes you blind.
Joy makes you an idiot. Man,
I love that. It does. Well, there's a great line in Irvin Yalom is a psychologist who does a lot of work associated with sort of the existential field. And he has a wonderful book called Love's Executioner. And where that phrase comes from is he talks about he really dislikes working with clients who are actively in love, in that very strong, like, honeymoon phase of love, because he feels like he has to execute this happy feeling in order to get the client to focus on some of actually the real challenges that might be going on in their life. Not that he goes in and does that intentionally. He does not try to rob people of their happiness, but that's how he feels when he's with them in the room.
Go on.
You're so blinded by this relationship or by this joy and this love that you're in, and I feel like I'm going to be the one that kills it by trying to bring you back down to earth.
See, I mean, from a, like, taking it a little bit more literal sense, chasing, like, dopamine and the things that the endorphins associated with joy, those can actually lead to very destructive behaviors.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have gambling. You need that rush of pulling the slot machine and seeing the number go up. Like you chase that, you chase that as a person. I find it interesting. Norm Macdonald, actually, we were talking about comedians kind of before we went live here. Norm Macdonald, pretty famously, like a casino, a gambling addict, but he paradoxically, the thing he was addicted to was hitting rock bottom. He loved the feeling of, like, that's where his rush came in, was in blowing all the money and hitting rock bottom, knowing that he's quote unquote famous. He could go make a crappy movie and then have money to go. And so he chased. Sure. So when he was going through his counseling, and he did it was like an NPR interview, I believe. He talked about when he did his counseling, the thing that they had to kind of talk about or go into was that high he got from hitting rock bottom. That was the thing that he had to, like, focus in on. So it's not 100% a parallel here, but that sort of joy, that's what he was chasing, was that like exultation he felt when he hit rock bottom. He loved it. It was freeing. It was liberating for him.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And on a chemical level, dopamine, it reinforces whatever behavior you're in. It's part of how your body does its whole reinforcement process, is it rewards you with dopamine. And now traditionally, or evolutionarily, that was associated with things like, oh, you got food. Good. Food keeps us alive. I want to keep you doing that. But nowadays, there's lots of things that give you a dopamine hit that your body was never can't understand that as a concept. It's a system, it's an engine. It can't account for that thing. So whether it's relationships, whether it's money, gambling, sex, loot boxes in a game, even.
Oh yeah.
Things that give us a dopamine hit will reinforce that behavior. But if it's not a healthy adaptive behavior, then that thing that you enjoyed can run amok really easily. And the way that sort of they described it in the new Slaanesh tome is that Slaanesh worshippers are some people who are, like, among the most depraved and depressing and tragic people you'll meet, because initially it was just a little thing. It was just a little thing that they enjoyed that was maybe a little bit taboo or a little bit forbidden. And now, look how far gone they are. They don't even recognize their friends and family anymore. They've probably long since sacrificed all of them just searching for that next dopamine hit, that next high, that next sensation, because everything else has become dull.
See, I feel like in a really cool way, Slaanesh is the best sort of um, uh, it's sort of the best criticism of like like modern life. I think we're very. I mean, Slaanesh tends to also have a little bit of a like a Greek high society thing to it. They're like lavish.
Sure.
They're a little bit of the. Of the hedonist spot, right? Where like they're just
right, yeah,
like,
right.
like but you like look in there, like they have these temples that are all gaudy and over the top, but like yeah, hedonism exactly. But they're very. I feel like there's a lot of like sort of criticism you could draw for modern society from them, and you touched on loot boxes there, and I feel. I need to bring this up because I used to write a lot about video games journals. That's actually how I Mephisto really began was a games journal on Kotaku. One of my biggest things, the causes I championed near the end when I quit writing was like really speaking out against microtransactions, and not initially from the angle of like a grumpy curmudgeon, which is what I very much am. Like, oh, put these microtransactions in my video game. Like, you already made money.
Back in my day, they just sold you the expansion pack, and that was all we needed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I had initially the curmudgeonly that, right, was how I viewed them, but I began to realize that they're essentially injecting gambling mechanics into video games.
Yeah.
Like you hit the button, the chest spins and then it pops open and like you get the golden gun or the golden skin or whatever special thing. And I think about what this does to children in particular.
Sure, yeah.
ESRB, quote-unquote, ratings don't rate online content. Video games have been very, very smart about putting that stuff on the quote-unquote online side of the game so they don't have to regulate it or tell parents that there is a gambling mechanic in the game because it's on the internet side of the game. Like, it's very subversive.
Yeah, and amazingly somehow more subversive than actual games about gambling.
Yes. Yeah, because...
No.
Yeah, it's crazy. Wasting money on Guild Wars loot keys to get the stupid weapon skin. Yeah, I mean it's very. I think this is a complete rabbit hole, but I think this is one of the more disgusting things about the AAA video game industry that is just taking advantage of people's chasing a dopamine. We're more plugged in than we've ever been. There's a lot of, like you were saying earlier, access to like getting those hits. I mean, you put a like on my social media thing, and I'm just like, I get that little somebody liked the thing. And so now I have to post more so that I get more of the little hearts, and that it's very, again, Slaanesh I think has a very, it could be a very there. I think there's some really good fan fiction, I guess, to be written about Slaanesh and kind of just doing a sort of take on reality or society. So
sure, and I think that partly ties into why, or maybe not why, but there's a connection there between Slaanesh and the Elves, because the way that they've traditionally been written, like one of their big flaws that GW has been fairly consistent on, is that the Elves feel their emotions much more strongly than the other races do. And so because of that, because their emotions tend to have much higher highs and much lower lows, that makes them very attractive to Slaanesh, who thrives in that excess. If instead of getting a little dopamine hit, you get the big dopamine hit, well then shit, I'm going to cater to you if anybody.
Right.
And like, yeah, if I pick up some humans along the way, great. But one of you, that's a lot.
Right.
That's worth it.
Yeah. That connection is Slaanesh's digestive system. So Slaanesh is...
Right, yeah. And into the belly you go, just like all of our money of EA. So there you go.
Yeah. Man, I mean, think about like buying GW boxes. Why do people have these teeming shelves of unpainted models that'll never be painted in their lifetime? Because getting the box and have the plastic crack, you get that hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we saw that run rampant with the Sisters release. Like, yeah, GW tried to have more boxes than they ever did before with previous releases, and we still saw people going on eBay the day after, like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll sell it to you for 3 times the price.
Like, yeah. Speaking
fuck
of
you, but also.
But also,
sisters do look pretty good though.
right. I've actually got a picture of Mephiston up here on the idle screen. And I haven't bought a 40K model in over 10 years probably. I will be buying this thing. I know it because I mean, look at how awesome that looks. If I buy that, how awesome I think this looks and how that makes me feel, I will have that awesome feeling personified and crystallized into a plastic form.
Yeah, right. And then I can look at this thing and it will bring that feeling back, or at least that's the idea. But I think the tricky part there, the really challenging part, is we have sort of connected that with the wrong part of the experience. The part of the experience that actually has the lasting effect is not the purchasing of the model, or perhaps even the constructing of the model, although maybe some models actually are a little bit tough to put together. But actually it's with the experiences that come with things like painting the model, or taking the model to a tournament and then playing with it and seeing how it goes, or writing a narrative about how it fits in. These are much more deliberate parts where we get more engaged with it, and that's an area where actually this could be quite reinforcing, this could be quite relaxing and quite adaptive. But just the purchasing and the owning of it, it's that very quick hit.
It's the quick
that's
hit,
really shallow.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one. With any purchasing, with any buying, it's a challenging part.
Soren, I have 3K points of Blood Angels Primaris. I will buy him. No, I'm gonna buy. No. I see. I look at this model and I go, this is my winged horror vampire conversion waiting to happen. And apparently he comes with an alternate arm in the kit. Before I saw the second half of what you said, Frank, I thought you were going to say he's holding a goblet and pontificating on what is a man. A miserable pile of secrets, but I'll accept the wiping the blood from the mouth too. It's the same thing, really. But yeah. So Slaanesh, joy makes you an idiot, which is my favorite take of RantCast so far.
There you go.
Joy makes you an idiot. Oh man. So that leaves us with the Master of Change, the Doctor just as planned, Tzeentch.
Yeah, my favorite of them. So Tzeentch is a little bit of a complex one, because Tzeentch, I think, maps a little bit more onto some emotions that aren't quite as basic. So things like hope, things like ambition, these are not necessarily basic emotions that we're born with, and they show up in most cultures, most societies have this concept, but it's not one of the ones we start out with.
Really?
So some of the basic emotions, just for anyone who's thinking about this, are things like fear, anger, sadness, joy, disgust, pain. I think shame might be one of them, but shame is very culturally bound. So that one, I think I always remember that one thinking it's a basic one, but it's actually not. It's actually like a secondary or a later one. So where Tzeentch, I think, might map is actually kind of onto fear. Because the things that Tzeentch attracts people to, the people who get attracted to Tzeentch are the people who want knowledge. They want, and essentially knowledge provides a sense of control, a sense that you know what's going to happen, or you can plan for what's going to happen. And then the terrible thing you think will happen, you can avoid. Because you've got knowledge, you've got plans, you've got schemes in place, or tricks that you can pull in order to get out of it. And also that sense of, if things aren't going great right now, that things will change. And while that can be hopeful, and hope is a great emotion, unless you're in 40K and where everything is a crap sack, and then hope's not a great emotion. There's also that flip side of it where it becomes that sort of unbridled ambition, where you start actually being willing, you need control so much, or you're seeking control so much, that you're actually kind of losing track of what the original point of the thing was, or you're so invested in staving off fear that you've really cut yourself off from other ways of experiencing things.
Huh. See, Tzeentch is a complicated guy, and his follower, it stands to reason.
But one of the things I like about Tzeentch is, if you dial it back from some of the like scheming, villain twirling their mustache, there's actually some real positives in that idea of like, if the system sucks for you, if things suck and you want change, or you recognize the fact that the only constant is that things will change, then that's actually what Tzeentch represents.
The inevitability of change, essentially.
Yeah, and learning to accept that fact, that things don't stay the same, that the universe always trends towards entropy, towards things changing and falling apart. And if you get that, and you're willing to accept that, and you're willing to figure out how to make that work for you, that's actually a very liberating mindset to have.
Yeah. I'm just catching up with a chat gang here. So Drake, real quick.
That's fine.
You're a converter. Making the model definitely counts. Yeah. So just kind of revisiting.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Revisiting the concept of like Age of Sigmar. I am not panning Age of Sigmar and calling you idiots for chasing the joy in wanting your box of models. To the contrary,
I literally have the bin of unbuilt models across from me in the room right now. Right, so there's a little bit of pot kettle to all of this.
Beasts of chaos! Like in the corner, another 2,000 points of view that'll never see the table. No,
my herdstone is literally in that bin.
Yeah. No, the reason I like Age of Sigmar as a hobby so much is because I do think you get sustained, controlled joy from it. Building the models, converting the models, painting the models, going to a tournament, playing, talking, starting a podcast to talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's a very sort of healthy joy to I think Age of Sigmar as a game. It's and then from like a financial aspect, when is joy bad is when you're chasing it at some sort of detriment to your health or well-being. Like,
right, yes.
Provided you can afford the models, right, and you have the time, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. But from a practical standpoint, a box of 20 more Tech Guard right now is $60. That's the same cost as a full retail price game.
Is it 60 for 20?
I think it's 60 for 20, right?
Oh wow, that's not bad. I thought I assumed it was going to wind up being something. No, 40 or 50 for 10.
No, it's 60 for 20, and the Death Riders are 45 for 5. So,
okay,
but right. I like to use the Mortec Guard because it's $60. $60 is, societally speaking, and in the U.S., that is the cost of the entertainment dollar. Video games go for $60. It tends to hover around $60 for like a sport venue, cheap seat. Around $60. The entertainment dollar, about $60 is the premium.
Yeah.
For $60, you get 20 more Tech Guard. That will last you.
Oh, you do, yeah.
Lot.
It is $60 for 20 more Tech Guard. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so it will cost it costs you $60, the same as a video game, and you're gonna get a longer lasting, more sustained. Provided you build them, paint them, and go play with them, you get a lot more return on that entertainment dollar than with a video game, for instance. You get 20 hours out of a video game for $60. You could be building more Tech Guard for 20 hours.
Right? Yeah.
So like,
but you're right. Yeah, it's that return on investment and that deliberate engagement with these creative aspects to the hobby or these strategic aspects to the hobby.
Right.
The pure just buying it to have it, to open the box and have the thing. That's where you get into areas where you're just not getting such a great return. But once you start getting into any of the more creative parts, any area where you need to be more deliberate in your thought process about how you're going to use this and how you're going to engage with it, that's where you're getting that more lasting benefit. Right. That's where it becomes meaningful, essentially.
Right. Exactly. And then the perfect example of a culture Tzeentch would have a horrible time with is the Tribe Without Time. Forget its exact name in South America. Their entire culture prevents them from seeking out more knowledge. That sounds like a terrible... I love knowledge. I am certainly the one who constantly... like, a curiosity is my jam. I always want to know more. That sounds terrible.
Right, yeah. And I think Tzeentch is one of the interesting ones because Tzeentch is probably the only Chaos God who's really going to be able, theoretically, to make sort of sustainable culture because Tzeentch thrives when civilization exists. Like, he needs a certain level of order to exist in order to then create disorder.
Well,
whereas you can kind of see all the other gods kind of circling the drain, which actually we see in the Age of Chaos. When Sigmar shows up in the areas that Khorne controls, it's like, you're just a bunch of ravening cannibals and there's not very many of you left.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually one of the interesting dichotomies regarding Chaos in general, is that it needs humanity. Because when, essentially they're saying in Age of Sigmar, that humanity's spark ignited is why Chaos was able to look to, like, oh, these mortal realms, let's go there now. Like, they need humans to corrupt and harvest and like the souls of and take over and absorb their soul energies from giving into their lofty concepts.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's kind of interesting. I know you called Archaon a Mary Sue.
Yeah, he is.
Definitely fits in a lot of ways. But I do think the one conspiracy theory is interesting about him, that his plan is if he burns everything down, eventually the Chaos Gods don't have anything left to consume, and then they'll just die. And he'll be strong enough to just murder them.
Yeah, because they'll be weakened, and he'll just crosh them, right?
Yeah, right. Which is maybe not necessarily the best strategy. I think most of us didn't.
Sorry, you cut out there. Most of us would
probably prefer that he didn't just murder existence.
Yeah.
But it's a plan. I wouldn't say it's the best plan.
Soren's hobby. He holds himself up in a room to escape the drama of his teenagers and just paints. There's your joy. There's your Cloud9 or whatever.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, until someone screeches particularly loudly and you slip and get some paint on some. But yeah, I could see that being a nice retreat, a nice creative. Yeah.
Your PS4 died. Oh, press F to pay respects to Casual Hitman's PS4. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you'll have time to work through your backlog of models. That'll be good.
Yeah, that's right. Just now you have a mat to work with. You've got a nice stable platform to put your models on.
Right, there you go. And the Necrolepsy, responding to our sort of talk of the Chaos Gods, I think that's why Slaanesh is an outsider, that they all kind of understand it, and Slaanesh just doesn't give a shit about sustainability. And
right, yes. In a way, sort of Slaanesh is the system run rampant, and then the other Chaos Gods are the benefiting.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh,
yeah.
No, if you take it that far, it breaks down, and then we don't get the stuff. And also, you're taking too much stuff.
Yeah. They kind of all hate each other in various ways, though.
Yeah.
Like the Chaos Gods aren't 100% on board with each other even.
Yeah, I like to think of what it's like when they try to play poker or any card game, and how ridiculous it would be that if they try to play poker, Nurgle folds every time. Just that is his play. He picks up his cards, he looks at them, he laughs, and then immediately folds. And everyone's like, well, all right. Tzeentch plays hands, and people are like, I cannot understand the purpose of why you would play that way. And he's like, oh, you'll figure it out. You don't have any chips left. Yeah. I don't get what the plan is. Khorne just hits every time, or does the very obvious most aggressive move. And if Slaanesh is even paying attention to the game, that's impressive, because he's probably doing something unmentionable under the table.
I see.
This is why they don't have family game night with the Chaos Gods. It just doesn't end well.
Right. Yeah, family game night. Monopoly. Could you imagine the Chaos Gods playing Monopoly? How just...
A lot of tables get flipped. I think this is why family...
Yeah. We wouldn't the Mortal Realms. We'd be on to whatever comes after Age of Sigmar, whatever game, 30K, I guess. I don't know. That's how 30K happened. Is the Chaos Gods were playing.
That's how Sigmar's Pantheon broke apart. Is a really rough game of Catan, I think.
Yeah. What, you're fucking negotiating with him? I just needed sheep a year ago, and you you give Marathi all the fucking sheep. Why did you ever fucking negotiate with me? Well, because you could win the game right now. You motherfucker, I was giving you a great deal. You could have won the game. All right, that doesn't come from experience at all.
No, not at all. Or, Malarians moving the burglar. Right, it's the burglar, right?
Yeah, it's the burglar. Yeah.
And Alaria's looking at him from across the table like, we used to be married. Don't you fucking dare. Don't you dare put that on those sheep. God damn it, Malarian. And he's just like...
You mad? He makes the troll face. I suggest reading my next two messages after the last one, since it helps explain why Tzeentch would have an issue with them. Right. Yeah.
I also think there's the potential in Tzeentch to be because Tzeentch is one of the only gods that actively will sometimes against. And so I think of all the gods, he's the one where there's the possibility to get in and try to fly under the radar and possibly have a reasonable standard of life, and just be he might be okay with me actually screwing him. Like, it might be part of some plan. And I don't know, maybe 1,000 years terrible. Right now it's working out okay. So.
Yeah, like he'd kind of like he'd do the Hook thing from or he'd do the Captain Hook from the movie Hook, just like good form, Peter. You know, he'd just be like pleased with you.
Yeah, he's like applauding, and like he's gonna turn a horrible mutant down the line if he feels like it. But for right now, he appreciates a solid play.
Yeah, he'll turn you into the horrible mutant down the line. But for now, yeah, good game, good show.
Yeah, well done. How do you feel about tentacle legs? Just asking for reference.
Not for them. I'd have to say again. I am strongly against. And then like, damn it, tentacle legs. So wild card,
tentacle ears.
Tentacle ears. Oh man, I see. Tentacle legs are utilitarian. Like they have a use. Tentacle ears.
You wanted a mutation that does something. No, that's the premium package.
So wild card, does the great horned rat fall on your emotional scale?
You know, I haven't thought too much about the great horned rat. From what
typical chaos player.
I know. From what I've seen, he kind of aligns with this idea of like kind of entropy. So like in some ways, some similarity to Nurgle. But I think the great horned rat maybe. You know, I would have to think more about it. I'm not sure. I haven't thought too much.
All right, we'll see if we'll see if you come up with something by the end of RantCast. We'll
if I come up with something, it'll be on Twitter. Maybe. I'll post a long screen on Twitter about where the Great Horn.
Perfect. All right. So, do you want to transition into our? Hey, it's Old World fan number 1. How's it going, Tristan? Even the Skaven argue about the aspects of the Great Horned Rat.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Well, like, they're so duplicitous and, like, backstabbing of each other and just, like, climbing over each other to get to the top. And, like, I maybe they don't fit on the emotional scale in any direct or obvious manner, but from a narrative standpoint, they are plot armor MacGuffin. Like, they're all of the trope. They are Deus Ex Machina. Like, they're the button that Games Workshop can hit to fix or change or ruin anything. Skaven did it. Like
I think they seem to do that a lot with Nagash in particular, where they're like, we wrote Nagash too well.
Well, he's too awesome, and so you gotta like they're in like, you know, break in case of emergency, and it's just Skaven did it, and like anytime Nagash almost wins, like Nagash almost wins, and like break it, and like Skaven show up and ruin everything. But honestly,
I would have gotten away for it too if not for you disgusting rats.
Yeah, exactly. But some people use this to make fun of Nagash, and I think it's awesome that the only way you can beat Nagash is with like obvious writers tropes. So suck it. Like,
Games Workshop just has like a bin with a few different balls in it, and they're like, oh, we wrote ourselves in. Skaven did it. Tzeentch did it. It's like reset the setting.
Blow up the world. Like,
yeah, like, too soon for that one. Find another one.
Yeah.
The Great Horned Rat might fit onto Disgust, but that might be because I don't play Skaven. So.
Yeah. I don't. I actually like Skaven. It's weird because like I have I like Skaven, I like Nagash, even though they always sabotage my main man. But, I mean Nagash. Sorry. Gotta stay on brand. ABB, always be on brand. So Dr. Alex.
Yes.
So I'd like to transition into talking a little bit more about like sort of the psychology of playing the game of Age of Sigmar.
Right. Yeah.
So. This sort of what I call the mental game, because if you've been around any competitive, events, whether it's you know, it could be football or sports ball or poker or Magic the Gathering or League of Legends or whatever it is, there's a mental game that I don't think that maybe the non-competitive minded or that like the outsider really realizes that mentality in a game is very much an important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a critical part, whether that's your maintaining your own morale or thinking about your opponent's morale or your teammates' perception. Yeah, there's a very strong mental component there that we just don't often think because, it's not codified in the rules, essentially.
Right. It's not codified. That's a perfect way of saying it. Real quick here is dissociative personality disorder for great horned rat. Is Skaven?
Maybe, I mean, he's the only one who has multiple greater.
He has multiple He has multiple greater demons. I'm sorry, you cut out again.
He's the only one who has multiple greater that are all very different. Yeah. That kind of captures the great horned rat.
Yeah. So he's got multiple. And then is Skaven jealousy or treachery, perhaps?
Maybe jealousy, I don't think is one of our most basic emotions. Not to say that it isn't one that many people experience. So that might actually be a good example here. And just to briefly touch on that, we often think of jealousy as a purely negative emotion, but there is something that is positive in that. It helps us identify a lack. It helps us identify a need or a desire that we might not have realized we had until we realized someone else had that thing. Mm-hmm. So it's a way that we sort of reflect back on ourselves when we see other people's experiences. The downside is that we tend to think, I'll appease this by taking the thing from this other person, which is not a healthy way of going about it. But even jealousy can have ways in which it can be useful. You just have to be aware of it and be willing to engage with yourself on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the big takeaway point kind of emotions, even ones that we view as negative, is perspective. I think having perspective when you're experiencing these emotions and being able to kind of like shape your perception and how can that work for me? If I'm in a negative state with an emotion, how do I change that state in a productive manner? Right.
Absolutely.
It.
Yeah. And so a big part of dealing with it, and this applies to also the mental game, this idea of you as the player, you managing your own morale, your emotional reaction, is having that awareness initially to even recognize what's going on and realize it, earlier, and then think, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to do about it? What do I do when my opponent does something and now I'm furious because I, don't have a game to play, or I'm feeling really dejected and disheartened, or I'm feeling really excited because I see something I want to do, but I don't want to overplay my hand or make my opponent feel terrible that I'm about to kick their ass.
You fell for my trap card, right?
Yeah. So that definitely ties in there as well.
So we've got this. I guess we'll break this down into a couple components because we got a notion of burnout, tilt, triggers, managing stress. But let's start with managing morale for self and opponent, because that's the one we kind of naturally landed on. So I mean, this is just, and I'm actually gonna Chat King Frank is gonna be on a RantCast here Monday, I believe. Part of the 5 RantCasts in 7 days or 8 days, something crazy like that.
You're keeping very busy.
I'm giving you a feast of content because I won't be RantCasting for Thanksgiving, and I'll have a little bit of a break there, so that when you're away with your relatives, you'll have Rantsgiving. Exactly. You can put in the earbuds. You can just listen to rant after rant and not have to talk to your family about politics or sports. I mean,
right. Please enjoy your RantCast helping of mashed potatoes.
Right. Exactly. So but Frank's going to be on next week, and we're actually going to talk about like how to be a good opponent. Right. Like, how to be a good opponent, how to give your opponents good games and stuff, because and I think managing morale is going to be useful. We'll probably revisit this a little bit with him, but how would you propose as a professional some tips maybe for managing your morale and maybe your opponents? I mean, we've all had that game where I call it like I use the term checking out, but I realize I use it to mean different things a lot. So it's not, I need to come up with a better term for it, but like checking out from a game where like something negative happens, and then you're just like, well, now I don't care about the game anymore.
Right. And I can actually give a personal anecdote for this one for sure. So I was at LodgeCon. It's a smaller tournament in the Midwest here, and I was playing a mixed order list, and this was, I think, literally the day Legions of Nagash, their book, had come out, was the day of this tournament. And I was playing a mixed order list because I started playing Age of Sigmar with Darkling Covens, didn't have enough models to play a full Darkling Covens list, but I was able to put together a mixed order list. And wound up playing against Sean Spilsbury, who great guy. If anyone runs into him, I think he's running a Trog list right now. So
Awesome.
actually, a lot of a good fun. At the time, he was playing Nurgle, and just halfway through our game, I realized that I hated the army I was playing. I didn't. The game was not going well. I didn't like the army I was playing, and I was just so sort of like demoralized in that moment that I started thinking like I don't really want to continue with this. I'm going to because I've signed on to this tournament. My opponent hasn't done anything wrong. He's been like a great sport the whole time. But from me, I am now experiencing this strong negative sentiment towards the game. And so I think there's a few things you can do if you wind up feeling that you're starting to get into that, or you're having some of those moments in the games that you're having. And one is to try to spend some time, if you don't know yourself very well and your emotional reactions, start keeping an eye out and actually start listening. Look for those signs, because emotions are a very physical thing too. And normally, if you're not recognizing it in your line of thinking, there's somewhere in your actual physical existence, in your existence in your body, where you might notice it early.
Well, the classic would be maybe crossing your arms. Not that it's a universal tell for anybody, but like okay, I'm crossing my arms. Classic read in terms of socializing, when people tilt their feet away from you. They've checked out. There are physical components to emotions, exactly like you're saying. And maybe figure some out. Like I cross my arms, but I do it like a sort of a hunch, and it actually like I engage and lean in, and so like I understand my posture. Usually mine is leaning back or sitting down, or I do the feet tilt when I'm checked out from the thing. Like I really like, you can watch my feet just kind of shuffle, and I'm out of it. So like there is a physical component to like sort of reading your own emotions to become
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're picking up on some of that. You're starting to notice, whether it's the feeling. A good term to toss out here is flooding, and that's when you are in a state of an emotion is so strong and so intense in you that actually your higher order brain functions actually start to check out, because they just don't work when any emotion gets strong enough. Your brain actually switches over to your emotion control center, who just handles the physiological changes that come with a strong emotion. So if you've ever gotten into an argument with a significant other and realized you lost the point a long time ago, and now you're just on very treacherous ground, you're both flooded. So there's your example there. So if you're realizing that emotion's starting to get more intense, you're starting to notice some signs. You're crossing your arms, you're leaning over the table, you're asking more questions about what your opponent is doing.
Wait, what are you doing here? We've all got the angry questioning guy, right? Like where that starts to happen because they're maybe flooding, right? Like
right.
Wait, what's giving you that bonus? What's when the game's not, you can see that happen. Why they have +1? I'm like, yeah, man, they had a +1 before. I mentioned, what's giving it to? You can have that begins to happen.
Sorry.
I've seen those. No, you're fine. I've seen those. I've seen some of that happen at the table.
Sure.
Actually. Yeah. So like maybe. So then you recognize it. What do you do once you've seen this happen? Like any.
So once you notice it, then that's the time where you really need to do something to try to relax yourself, to try to step back from this. What I would tell one of my clients to do would be to use what we call grounding techniques. They're things that pull you out of the mental experience that you're having and really place you just in the present moment. And when you're doing that, it provides some space for the emotion to start to try to calm back down. Because essentially what your body is doing is it's going into that fight, flight, or freeze state. And that's not really a state where that you're playing a game. You don't really want to get into that state. That's not a helpful state to be in, especially not if you're trying to connect with your opponent and engage in this sort of social aspect of the game.
Right.
So one of the most basic ones is deep breathing. If you notice yourself getting into that space, start taking some deep breaths. Start trying to really slow yourself down. Start trying to focus on just the things that are going on around you, and try to take yourself out of your stream of thinking, because that's probably reinforcing the state that you're in.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty useful. So what about like with your opponent? Obviously, you're not going to go life coach on your opponent if they're starting to see some of this behaviors at the table. Do you any idea on any ideas, any thoughts on how you might manage your opponent's game, your opponent's morale?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you notice that your opponent is starting to have, there's a few steps you could take that might help out here. And is actually give them a little bit of space. Let them have their reaction. They're allowed to have it. If they're frustrated with what's going on, they're feeling disheartened. You just did an alpha strike and everything worked well. I used to play a Gav bomb list. I've seen that look on the opponent's face where they're like, evocators do what?
Mm-hmm.
After combat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pulling off more models now. They start to like.
Yeah. Oh, that's just a free thing you get to do. Oh, I'll pick up this half of the board, I guess.
Okay.
Right. So let them have their emotional reaction. Like you don't necessarily want to head that off, keep them from having it. If they're frustrated or they're annoyed or they're disheartened, it happens. It's a competitive game. You're going to have those moments.
Right.
If you're noticing that it's sticking around, though, that really they seem to be having a negative experience, you might want to check in with them. And you don't have to get deep into it, especially if you're not comfortable doing that. But you might want to, say to them, oh, hey, I'm going to go get a drink of water. Would you like something? Or, or try to focus on what they're doing that's going well and calling attention to that. And you don't want to be Pollyanna-ish. You don't want it to seem fake or ingenuine, but just trying to join them in their part of the game as well of like, oh, man, no saves. Oh, that really sucks. Like, that's not supposed to happen. Or like, yeah, oh, yeah, you did get a lot of hits in there. Oof, yeah, I'm not looking forward to rolling those.
Yeah.
Trying to find that way you can engage with them on their part, especially if you've got the upper hand and the game is becoming that foregone conclusion. Then how do you now make this more of a collaborative experience? How do you now engage in that, like telling a story with them? How do you engage with them, the person, because the way the game shakes out might not be something that they're going to enjoy.
Right. And it's okay. And that's the other thing is like I really think it's we do have some of this like a little bit of the fake nicety happens in this community a little bit, and
sure,
that's fine. I'd rather have fake nice than just pure assholes.
Right.
but like there's sometimes where like it's okay to like feel bad that the game didn't go your way. I don't. Right. I like to let my opponents know that I don't think they need to feel fake happy for my victory and stuff like that, because I'm not the kind of,
yeah.
And I do that by sort of leading the example by like when they're about to roll a hit, I'll be like, all right, ones, and like and I'm very playful with it and stuff like that, and so now they realize that they don't have to cheer when I roll boxcars on my charge.
Right, yeah.
Because you have that player like, oh, boxcars, dude, awesome. I'm like, don't cheer for that. Don't cheer for my boxcars. Like, I'm trying to crush you. Like,
right.
But like I let people in on, I've made it a conscious effort to try to be better at socializing than maybe your average nerd. I think that stereotypes, that tropes run its course. The Big Bang Theory socially awkward nerd is not. I'm not really about that. But I've certainly been a very conscious about people.
Right.
I try to. I think that socialization is a skill, and since it's a skill, you can refine it and you can get better and be conscious about it. So that's just my personal approach.
Yeah, I agree. And trying to make it genuine, trying to make it authentic, and trying to avoid falling into sorry, like I did.
You don't want to.
You brought the army to do the thing. You don't have to apologize for the fact. The whole purpose is to be competitive and to try to do well. You don't have to apologize for doing well, but also don't rub it in. Try to join your opponent when they're doing well, or sympathize with the fact of like, oh man, that sucks that you didn't roll any saves. Like you should have. The dice should have helped you there, and I am annoyed at your dice for you that they did not do that.
Right. All right, so that's, I think, morale. We've I hope, Frank, you're taking notes for our follow-up RantCast.
Yeah.
So
on a just slightly other note, just to quickly add a bit there, I think that's also why certain lists are maybe more polarizing with certain people, because they do have a very obvious player morale, and I think Alpha Strike is the best example of this. Of like either I hit you with my thing very quickly, and either it works, in which case you probably have a non-game, but I win, and so your morale might tank. but that's also going to throw you off and make it easier for me. Or my thing doesn't work, and then my morale might tank because, well, now I'm going to have a non-game because I just blew all my army.
I missed all my. I dropped. I rolled the snake eyes. I missed every charge, and now that counter punch is going to come, and I'm blown off the table too. Yeah.
Right. And when you're the one building the army to do that, you're insulated because you realize. But nowadays, actually, it's becoming, you can build lists that pretty much guarantee some of those things. So that's, I think, becoming a little less common.
Mm-hmm.
And we're maybe having a little bit more of people being on the receiving end and being like, oh,
yeah,
I didn't realize we were going to be in combat turn one.
There's been a transition in the game where, on one hand, like, I think it's a good thing that Games Workshop has made a conscious effort to speed up the game. Just from a very simple manner. Fighting starts on turn 1 now, as opposed to turn 2 or 3. Like, you're not posturing around the table quite as much. As in general, not that you don't have the games where you kind of like play a real chess game and like getting ready for like the big hit.
Sure.
But like they've kind of sped up the game, and I think that is in general a good thing. But it has led to some of these, the Alpha Strikes now. It's not just like Gav Bomb showing up and either the trick works or not. It's Iron Jaws. They're in your face. They have to make Alpha Strikes. They have to make a 4-inch charge with a plus 4-inch to charge. Like, they're not going to fail that charge. Like, so that army, Slaanesh has so much redundancy. A lot of these armies are doing their thing that they're designed to do on like a pretty guaranteed clip. And then it becomes about their thing. They want to do their thing, and they're going to do the thing because it's all but guaranteed now. It's not just I need to make 7-inch charges. No, it's I'm going to make this charge, and I'm either going to kill you, or you're going to chaff up and do some stuff to try to stop me from doing my guaranteed thing. And so I think we have had like a bit of a culture shock as a community, and that just external factor on the game has led to some of this some negative morale. Yeah,
and I think in the past, where some of those lists were a little bit more risk reward, and so you kind of saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. You kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, and you knew there was that chance of like this might not work, and then they're standing out there with their flapping in the wind, and I might get a chance to actually pull this out, and I might have a real option here. Now, though, some of those armies, they don't give you that chance. They are for sure in early on, or even if they're not, they're actually not that worried about you hitting them back.
Right.
So I think trying to maintain your own morale is important, because there are just some lists out there that are much better about, either ignoring what plan you might have, or it's great you have a plan, but I hope it's a turn 1 plan because that's when I'm going to be in on you.
Right.
And then also trying to think too, there are certainly ways you can use this to your advantage when you're building a list that aren't meant to be, exploitative. I was playing a game with Jake the other day, and Jake, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your last name, Jake Lequeer, and we were talking about, I was playing a change host at the time, and he was saying, he described it as
Wait, you mean part of the American ETC team, Jake?
Yes. Jake, who he won NashCon, right? That was the biggest event he's won recently.
Yeah, he won NashCon. He was teamed up with someone for Holy Havoc. I believe they walked away. I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Oh right,
they won Holy Havoc, I believe.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, and he won. He finally got his painting award for his Daughters of Cain too. So it's just been the year of Jake. He's just been crushing it. So
right. So Jake is someone who clearly knows the. So he's giving a.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out again.
Sorry. I think it might be sometimes when the tries to screen go quiet. I will try to fix that in a moment, but it should be okay for now. But he was describing, playing against the change host. Part of the goal as the change host player is to not just attrition your opponent's army, but also your opponent's brain.
Yes.
That to tire them out through playing, that they start to make more mistakes that you then capitalize on, because you pretty much know what you're doing. And so there are some ways you can do that too, to build an army that's meant to even tire your opponent out, or to try to encourage them to enter certain mental states that are just less productive.
Trying to tilt your opponent is a real strategy in competition. Like,
sure, yeah.
Trying to tilt your opponent is a real strategy. Getting into their head, you know, like, for instance, if I know I'm not a better player than you, and I'm going as hard as I possibly can, and this is the dark side of Mephisto that doesn't often come out in Age of Sigmar, but he's been around in other events. What was it? There was a player. This actually happened in Soul Calibur. This is one of my favorite stories ever. I was running the Soul Calibur. I was running a Soul Calibur 2 tournament at a convention. It was probably about a 50-person turnout. It was really, the game was brand new. There was a cash prize pool, so we had like 50 people playing it. And there was this one, and people were like practicing because we had all the TVs set up with Soul Calibur 2, and people were like practicing. And I saw this guy beating his friends and just like laughing the whole time and stuff like that. And and something happened in my brain where like I snapped, and I'm like, I must teach this little prick a lesson. So I walked over. I'm like, oh, mind if I play? Yeah. Oh man, I love Soul Calibur. It's such a cool game. Like, we should play with weapons on, and like, you should play your ultimate weapon, and I'm going to play with the ore, which is the joke weapon on Nightmare. And I crushed him because I wanted to crush him, and I got in his head so hard that like I got in his head so hard after that first game that in the second game he just handed it to me. And as a byproduct, which was my desired outcome, the monster I am, his friends started beating him when I walked away because they just like, I had done a couple things. One, I had damaged his mental edge that he had over everyone.
Right, yeah.
Now he's not unbeatable. But also I got into his head, and some guy, I had hurt his ego because he, like, I'm the best in my group of friends, and I don't remember how he did in the tournament, but he certainly didn't win it the next day. But like,
right, yeah.
But yeah, you can, and that's the thing is like, is you can mind game like good players if you're not to their level. This is a tool you can use in a competitive sense. We're a little bit more on the lighthearted, positive side of the psych here, but there's a dark side to the psychology of gaming.
Right, sure, and I certainly wouldn't suggest trying to find a way to do this
Brendan
that makes
would.
your opponent like feel terrible about themselves or feel bad about the game.
Right.
But there are certainly ways that you can try to have approaches, have tactics, have things you do to try to shift how your opponent's approaching the game, shift their mindset in ways that are still fair and are still part of the game, and then also to try to make it clear of like, yeah, that's what I tried to do to you during the game. I'm sorry, I messed with your head. But also, I really enjoyed that game, and I hope you did too.
Well, this is the you have some Kinnerai heart renders, right? And you just like you keep looking over at the Kinnerai heart renders and like just measuring 9 inches on stuff, and you have no intent of actually dropping them there.
Right.
But you're looking. But now the opponent has to think about it.
Right,
because you've put that in their head. You're like, oh, I've got these Kinnerais, and just like look over at them and like grab one, and then like while they're doing their movement phase and just like measuring from objectives or something, just to mess with them. You can do the mind game aspect, which is, I actually think in a gamesmanship sense, I think it's really funny, like to do shit like that. But
yeah, I think it's fair game to increase your opponent's cognitive load, to be giving them more things that they're trying to track and stay on top of. So that way they eventually, just because that's how brains work, something slips through the cracks, and then you're able to take advantage of it. As long as you're not doing something like slow playing, which is universally frowned upon.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Or like trying to distract them during the game of being like, oh, did you see that thing? Or like, here's a funny picture of my dog. And it's like, well, like, I appreciate that you're trying to show me your dog, but I'm also in the middle of my turn here, and now I can't remember what charge distance we agreed on. Things like So that's not like on the side of like not fair play. I think you can agree, but like when I walk up to the table with Nagash, I'm like, oh, what's your favorite model? No reason. Like, right. Those types of things I think fall within normal expectations.
Yeah.
But yeah, like knocking over a drink so that way a model gets shit.
Yeah, fuck that. Yeah. There's some shady stuff there. Don't be a cheat, basically. Like it's all right to like kind of have some mental gameplay, but like being a cheat is just douchey.
Yeah.
So
And as one thing that I would say is, I don't see this very much, but let's say you wind up in a pretty extreme situation where like your opponent is clearly not enjoying what's going on, and not even like checked out, but like clearly they are having a strong emotional reaction to what's happening. You might want to just ask them if they want to take a break for a while.
Yeah.
And not even like, oh, you step away, but just like, hey, do you mind if we take a 5-minute break? Like, I know we'll lose a little bit of time here, but yeah, let's step away. Do you want to take a bathroom break? Do you want to get some water? Just like step away from this for a while.
Yeah.
At that point, probably no one's concerned about whether or not you're going to play 5 turns. Probably more important is the human across the table from you, and just trying to give them a break from all of it.
Yeah. Casual Hitman, what you describe here, I find it hard to stay on track in a competitive game when I get along with the opponent too well. This is exactly what happened between Vince Venturella, Tom Lyons, myself, and Haywo at Holy Havoc. Like, when 15 minutes in the round happened, we were having too much fun just shooting the shit at the table that we lost. We weren't on top of our time as we should have been.
Right, yeah.
Like, collectively, 4 people at a table weren't just, yeah. So, I mean, that's a thing. That's a real, I think that's a real hazard. But you fix that just by being conscious of it, right? Like, you have to be aware of it. I want to have as good of an interaction with my opponent as possible. That's like a goal when I walk up to the table. So I'm not too upset if we have a clear winner at like 3, but we didn't play the full 5 turns, as long as we're both on that same page of interaction. And
right.
As long as we're on that same page. But like, that goes with gauging your opponent. You have to, when you first meet an opponent, you have to kind of get a read for how they want to play the game. If they're playing fast, if they're talking less, if they're respect that, now you're playing chess, right? Like,
right, yeah. Yeah, and doubles events are notorious for this, because now you've got 2 extra people at the table, and everyone's, you've brought some ridiculous combinations
just
silly
crap.
Like, the odds of you getting through to turn 5, unless, somebody's playing a really heavy alpha list, is low at best. But it is tough. At Havoc, I definitely had games where I was like, all right, come on, guys, let's get this turn going. Like, I'd love to talk about the next BS GW is going to come out with too, but like, I'd also like to get to turn 2.
Yeah.
I'm playing a summoning grind army. I kind of need to see the late turns.
Yeah. No, I think we only had the one game go to time. The other ones got to a point where we were able to discuss them adequately.
Sure.
Yeah. Where they were either in the bag, or like it was obvious the outcome of the game. Roll. Okay, quick roll some saves here. See if I kill that model type thing. Where you're like, okay, yeah, I would have killed that model, and then you can wrap it up in a gentlemanly fashion.
Sure. Yeah.
So that we talked about sort of morale. I think that easily sort of drifts into tilt and mental fatigue. So tilt. Boy, I don't have a very good definition of tilt, but I think if you play games, or especially online games, you have an understanding of what tilt is. Would you like to try to stab at the definition of tilt?
Yeah, I'm sure there is some community out there who has actually down. I mean, and I'm not even 100% sure. I think fighting games is actually a good example of this, because what brought to mind was me and my friends played a lot of Guilty Gear in high school. And I was the one who sort of picked it up and introduced people to it, and so I just had the most experience. It was really good. And eventually what I started doing was, I wouldn't pick my character, I would pick whoever they picked to do a mirror match, and then beat them with their own characters.
Getting in their head, going for the tilt.
Yeah, and so I guess that would be an example of tilt. It's making a choice that is going to directly impact your opponent's mental state, and that's your choice. You're making that choice because of the impact on your opponent's mental state, not that that's a knock-on effect of whatever choice you made.
Right. Well, so, I mean, tilt, you can experience tilt on your own, like League of Legends, giving up first blood. Like, you'll tilt, right? Like, you can tilt. The hazard of tilting is strong there. And I've given up first blood. Fuck! I'm frustrated with myself. Maybe I think that the guy didn't beat me straight up or fair, so like that's just spiraling in my mind that like they didn't deserve that outcome, and now I'm tilted. And now it only takes one fucking all chat lol or GG easy or some fucking quip some asshole on the internet, or in fighting games it's teabagging.
Oh God!
They
Right.
they teabag your character and like motherfucker, and like now you're tilted. In Age of Sigmar, I've recognized some tilt happening, failing a charge that you needed.
Right.
Could go into tilt,
or
as a
rolling that battle shock, and you're like, I just need you to be less than a 6, and it's a 6.
Yep. I just need you to tie up this unit one more combat. So don't roll the 6. Roll the 6. Now the tilt hazard is there. Death players.
I'll give you a good example of tilt. I was playing Kyle Knapp, fellow member of the Pants Mafia.
Oh, he's here in chat.
Yeah. Hello, Kyle. Kyle, you'll remember this.
Yeah.
Gorgrunt is into a Gryph-hound. For those of you who have not played against them, Gryph-hounds have no save. They do not get to save if you put attacks through on them. But they do get to make checks if they're next to mystical terrain. And his unit of Gorgruntas could not kill a single Gryph-hound. And the state that he entered, I think, is what we might call tilt.
Tilt, yeah. So tilt happens. Tilt is real. Death players, one of the things, if you play Death, especially Legions of, like when you lose your general, you lose a lot of your army's gas.
Right.
It's all hinged on your generals. This is why the ethereal amulet Vlazda is the main pick, because it lives, and so you don't lose those tools for your army. Death players, how do you separate the great Death players from the bad Death players? Is they have mentally prepared for that condition, and so when it happens, they don't tilt. That's
right. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the big takeaways here is tilt is something that just it's a hazard of play. It usually happens with mistakes or anomalous situations. The only way I think for dealing with tilt is to just prepare yourself for those situations, and so you have a practiced sort of mental state that you can go into when tilt would begin to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Practice games are great for this because any novel situation you're going to react much more strongly to than a situation that you're familiar with. So if you've had those practice games where, that giant cabbage ran in and got in on your change and wiped him in a turn, you were like, well, that was the linchpin of everything. That sucked. I don't know what to do from here. But if that's happened to you a dozen times already in all your practice games, and now you're preparing for that at the tournament, yeah, you're probably going to just be less affected.
I have a story also involving Kyle rolling the hottest I have ever seen a person in like a single game of Warhammer with his freaking dispossessed, and like.
Oh right, yeah. I remember you telling me about
this game. Yeah. So like, and here's the thing: is like I didn't, pardon me. Because I've played Kyle before and we were having so much fun, if he had been a stranger in that same situation, I probably would have tilted and lost the game. But because I have a rapport with Kyle, I didn't tilt. I just played the game of Age of Sigmar. But had he got in my head with his stupid 6-up Iron Drake save bullshit, I would have tilted. Going, I need to win initiative. I need to win priority. I need to win priority to beat him. And never getting priority, so he kept hanging on in the game. And the ability to tilt was the threat of tilt was there. And
maybe there's an argument there for part of why some people, especially maybe people who play 40k more, where they don't have the shifting priority, dislike that aspect so much is because it does cause tilt. It's one of the easiest causes you can experience, especially if you take a more polarized list where, if I'm running a shooting list or a magic heavy list and you double turn me with an aggressive combat list, that's not good for me. I'm not going to have a good time. If I double turn you, you're probably not going to have a good time. So yeah, I think even just that basic game mechanic there builds some level of tilt in, unless you have played enough with your army that, you're preparing for it, you're countering that in your strategy, you've deployed with it in mind and things like that.
Well, I mean, and that's another one is like I've tilted games where I botched my deployment. I go midway through my deployment, I go, shit, that unit's out of position.
Yeah, that
Like,
lovely moment when you look at the field and you're like, oh, I completely fucked myself.
Yeah, I
Ah,
completely,
great, that was good.
I completely fucked that up.
Yeah,
And so managing tilt, another aspect of is not
right.
showing your tilt, by the way.
Mm,
Because if you show your opponent you're tilted, then they can mental game you.
yeah,
You've shown a vulnerability. So there's tilt. I think tilt is also sort of a natural segue, or maybe partners with mental fatigue,
yeah,
which is you're making a lot of decisions in the game of Age of Sigmar, which means you
yeah.
have a lot of opportunities to make the wrong decision. The more
Yeah.
fatigued you get mentally, go on.
And if you're in a tournament setting, you're also on the clock.
Mm.
So if you're playing a game with your friends, you can take the time to really think it through and try to figure out, what's this next step here. If you're at the tournament, the clock's running the whole time. So just another added pressure to that.
Yeah, yeah. Frank, that is the worst ever. That's the worst advice ever. No takesy backsies. Don't do takesy backsies. This is
If you're gonna do takesy backsies, you and your opponent should agree on that at the very beginning and put some sort of limit on it.
I say one.
I've done it in some games with people, and we've said like, okay, like it has to be within the same phase, and it has to be like obvious that you could still shuffle that thing around.
Or if you
and your opponent has veto power and has the ability to say like, oh, I don't know about that. But if you're like, oh, it's the battle shock. Oh, can I go back and do this thing from the shooting phase? Oh, no, that's real messy.
No. See, and here's the thing: is my rule is I do not ask for takesy backsies personally, but I mentally log. I say aloud, and then I'm already moving on to the next step. I say, shit, I should have moved that guy, and then I'm already doing the next thing.
Yeah.
To show that I am aware of the mistake I made, so that my opponent realizes I am a smart. And and then I go on to the next step. And like I played Norm Nondorf. He's a fantastic, really great hobbyist. He's got this prolific hobby streak going on Twitter right now. I think he's at like 700 days or something outrageous.
Wow, jeez. Well done, Norm.
It's prolific.
Good job.
But like his his first tournament out and stuff like that. He like grudged me, and it was going to be his first tournament. So like I take on a little bit of the teacher's role, like
Sure.
like a little bit of an instructional role. Like I don't want to instruct you on how to beat me, because I don't think you learn if I do that. But like as something happened, and he went, oh man, I wanted to do that. And I'm like, that's your one takesy backsies, man. And like because I like from a teaching perspective, it's like I want you to make the mistake, recognize you made the mistake, and see what it costs you down the line.
Right.
So that you learn from it.
And I think also keeping in mind like the potential stakes of it. Like have been getting a lot of practice with endless spells, and so and a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't have as much experience, or they've used them very rarely. Remember some of the just like picky ins and outs of the rules. So I will sometimes point out to someone where they're like, "Oh, I cast this spell. Now I'm going to dispel this thing," and I'll say to them like, "Actually, you were supposed to do the dispel first, but." Go ahead and do it. I don't mind if you go ahead and do that out of sequence, but I'm going to let you know that just in case you run into someone down the line who actually is pickier about it.
Yeah, and then the other thing is letting them know once, twice. Now they've corrected the behavior throughout the course of the game. They don't do it five. If they try to do it 5 turns in a row, now you've got an issue.
Right, because how little attention are the positive read on that is you're paying so little attention. The past 4 times I've told you, which is maybe diagnostic actually.
Yeah.
But the negative one of it is you're just not taking this information in, even though I'm telling you. So that's not great.
Yeah. And so back onto the topic of mental fatigue.
Right.
It really, I think it comes down, just like with tilt, it comes down to getting your reps in. You want to take that implicit knowledge and make it explicit knowledge when it comes to your army. So the sort of external, having to consciously make the decision, the implied, like that state, you want to take it from that to make it second nature. You know this unit moves this far, so you're not actually consciously making a mental choice about how far it moves. You're not engaging your brain on how far it moves. You know how far it moves, so you just move it. Now the decision becomes, where do you move it, as opposed to how far does it move? Should I move it? where do I move it to? Like, you have extra mental steps in there. That's going to lead to your mental fatigue. And if you fuck up, that's going to lead to your tilt. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. It's a slippery slope from there.
Yeah.
It's this definitely getting practice in is helpful. And like you said, the more things base instinctual knowledge, the easier it is because your brain just doesn't have to work as hard. One of the things here, you've got two things you're working with and against. One is that your brain is an electrical system. It does want to take the path of least resistance, and to build up a new path, it takes work for your brain to prune and make those connections effective here. So, if you've only played one game with the army, you just haven't formed those mental connections that are going to make this click faster for yourself. And the other one is that your brain is also a chemical system. Your mental energy, your mental fatigue is a neurochemical interaction. You only have so much of your resources to go around before genuinely you are spent. So you have to keep that in mind too. And that I think maybe plays a little bit more into knowing what types of army you can and can't play effectively.
Okay. I mean, that's a really good segue and a really great point is, I mean, it's mental fatigue. We always talk about how, like, for whatever reason, we as a culture seem to think that the mind is somehow this esoteric, disembodied, non-physical component. Your brain is a physical thing. It has mass. Like, it operates on electricity and chemicals for, like, physical states. Like, these are real things that happen. Day 2 at a tournament, I'm mentally more fatigued than day 1.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I have had this experience once where you're trying to go to bed after day 1 of the tournament. You're like, I'm on 3-0. I've won all my games, and now I'm supposed to sleep. How do I sleep? I can't remember how to sleep. Everyone, how sleep work? You could go in and you could be mentally fatigued. You could be buzzed from what's going on. You could have lots of stuff bouncing around in that head going into day 2.
Yeah. I did that at Holy Wars 2019. You get that win, or you go into day 2. Now the pressure is on. So
right, yeah.
So I mean, I guess just kind of continuing. What are some other ways to kind of deal with mental fatigue? Because it's physical. It's we always act like mental health isn't physical. It's a physical. It is physical. Everybody. Spoiler, you heard it here first.
They're interlinked system. Your brain and your body and your consciousness and your everything that you experience as part of your consciousness has a chemical counterpart in what's going on in your body that in no way diminishes it or its importance. It's just two systems that are working together.
Right. So how do you this mental fatigue is gonna? I mean, it's gonna happen. How do you help yourself? How do you deal with this going into that day 2? How do you sleep? Eat. You're gonna laugh at me, but no. You try to get to sleep. Try to eat. Don't.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Basic self-care is a big part of this, and often this is an area where we
shower.
Bad for shower. Yeah, take a shower. Relax. Yeah. But I'm notoriously bad at this. Kyle is notoriously bad at this. We all are notoriously bad at this. I
get hammered.
Staying up late.
Yeah, I get hammered Saturday night. I wake up hungover day 2. Like
drinking too much is another part of it. Yeah.
I stay up talking.
Which is why doubles is nice because then you pass your teammates. So
like what was it? NashCon. I stayed up. Talking to Ty and Bryce up until like 3 a.m. and then locked out of my hotel room until 7 a.m. So day 2 I was kind of a mess. Like, and obviously I'm going to be mentally fatigued because I didn't rest. I stayed up late drinking, So I mean, and that's if you care about this, right? Like, if you don't care about going 1-4, you might still want to have good games, so you should have an eye toward managing yourself and your self-care and your mental health.
Because if you're being sloppy because you don't care anymore, then you might slip into that point where you don't care enough that you're also not giving your opponent a very good experience.
Right.
Which is also, even if you're going 1-4, I have been there many times. I still, on that game 4, game 5, I still want to go and try to have a good time, even if I'm not in the running to win anything. But if I'm like, I went 0-3, so I had a few more beers than usual, and I didn't get as much sleep, and I'm going in and I'm hungover, which I haven't done at a tournament yet, but believe I've seen
it's
for sure.
the best. You should do it. Like you're not playing Warhammer. Yeah.
But to take care of mental fatigue, do yourself some favors. Try to, whatever your date is to finish everything, move it up a day. Don't try to leave stuff to finish by the day before, by the night before the tournament. Make it the night before the tournament, so you actually get a day of rest. Mm-hmm. And if you have that rough night where you stay up late earlier, then don't do that the night before the tournament. Do it a day or two out, so that way you actually get a break. Mm-hmm. Eat. Make sure that you're eating along the way. Use the restroom regularly. Make sure you're staying hydrated, and that means drinking water. Everyone, water.
Hey, beer worked for the Egyptians, man.
It does, but after beer 12, you might not be as hydrated that you. So, and then also taking breaks along the way. It's tempting to, after your game, immediately go chat things out, but maybe take a minute to go outside and take a deep breath, get some fresh air. Go and grab something to eat. Have a banana, because we stand over tables a lot of the way, and I know I tend to start to get achy and creaky. I mean, I spent all of Holy Havoc bent over like an old man because I hurt my back during pairing for round 1. So just stretch a little bit, do things to help yourself out. Just take care of yourself and your body going in, and that helps. Another thing is, try to know what kinds of armies that actually you're capable of playing.
This is a good point I want to gloss over. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people talk about what types of armies they like, and I've been experimenting. I don't know that I have a home type that I like, but as I've played and as I've tried different things out, I've felt the difference between, like, an Alpha Strike army is very relaxing to play because you toss everything in, and then, like, I don't worry about getting to round 5 because most of my stuff is either on or off board by the end of round 2. Mm-hmm. So that's doable. I can play that. But lately I've been experimenting and playing a change host, and I'm having a really hard time finishing my games. I'm having a real hard time getting to those later turns. And even if I do get there, I'm so exhausted from moving all this stuff around that, I don't know if I'm having a good experience. I don't know if I'm giving my opponent a good experience. Uh-huh. So there's a question there of, do I want to practice enough to get good enough with a change host to keep playing this? Or do I have to set a boundary with myself and say, maybe I don't bring this to a tournament because I don't have the mental capacity to actually play this effectively and play this in a fun way. Mm. And so trying to be honest with yourself about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've said multiple times, one of the reasons I'm so excited about Ossiarch Bonereapers is the not running 120 skeletons anymore. I still get my skeleton fix. Like
just
I get
a comfortable 80 skeleton.
Yeah, I get that dopamine hit of pushing skeletons around and humming the Army of Darkness theme song, right? But like,
right, yeah.
But like, I'm only pushing around 50 of them instead of 120, or 80 of them instead of 120. That last 40 is just that chopping off 40 of them in terms of physically moving and mentally tracking is a big break from me. So it's gonna
sure.
I mean, this is like a vacation. There was a joy I experienced in playing Beasts of Chaos because the whole army dies so quickly and nothing's coming back. It was liberating playing them at Holy Havoc and just like playing a super cagey game where I'm stashing, a unit of Ungor in the corner and summoning stuff onto the board edge and having this really fun cagey game. Like,
sure.
So yeah. Like I found that I really enjoyed that. Now, yeah, I mean, I think you got to do some self-assessment, some self-exploration, and figure out what armies you like to play and what doesn't fatigue you as much. What keeps you keeps you engaged. Sometimes you think that you're gonna love the army and then you get it out in the wild and you don't know that until you do get it out in the wild at a tournament in real time and go, man, I don't like this. Well, maybe don't grind it out for the rest of the year.
Right. Yeah.
We do try to. I do in general. I am a proponent of, stick on an army for a year type thing, or a year is just an arbitrary value for an extended period of time. Maybe change the list. Maybe you're not running 120 skeletons now. You do take an extra couple units of cavalry that you wouldn't run in the pure optimized version. Because, I mean, if you're not completing games, that's kind of like losing a game anyway. So even if the more optimal version is quote unquote more optimal, it's the better army. But now you're more mentally fatigued. You're having less enjoyable games. You're not completing games. You're not gonna win anyway now, right? Like this. So this is this just is all kind of connected.
Absolutely, yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're interested in the type of actually not really in my playstyle. Excited about it, or I still want to try. It doesn't mean you can't. It just means try to think about, is there a way you could modify it to make it easier for tournaments? Or do you not bring that to tournaments, but you bring that to club nights, or you bring that to casual games, or like your friend will give you the 6 extra hours. Time. Like we're not breaking out the chess clocks for this, so we can try stuff out.
Yeah, my friend Sylvaneth army, we just kind of play in a very much a casual setting. That's where I first was playing 120 skeletons. Is 120 skeletons against 100 dryads, and we're just like fucking. We have all the time in the world. We're gonna have a slap
fight in the trees.
Yeah,
guys.
Yeah. We're just
round 5. All of us are still gonna be here.
Right. Oh, you just have to tank up on energy drinks. Get those. Get those. I think it's caffeine shakes going. Yeah, I mean that's another strategy.
And. Part of that too is speaking of mental fatigue, like try to keep your routines going. If you usually have a cup of coffee.
If you usually have a cup of coffee in the morning, sorry, you're cutting
maybe try to get one.
Yeah.
Maybe try to have one or tea or something. Get something along the way, so that way you're not having to deal with withdrawal from caffeine at the same time as you're trying to figure out, how do I navigate around? How do I screen out this ridiculous charge I'm facing?
Yeah, so Frank has experienced in real time non-coffee in the morning Andrew and coffee in the morning Andrew. I am different people. Like if I don't have, and maybe it could be pure placebo. Placebo effect is a very it's
a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Could be pure placebo, but if I don't have that cup of coffee, I am useless. Like around 10 a.m. and under, I am fucking useless. You can't talk to me, and I won't remember anything I said. I am if tomorrow morning, if you send me a text message at 9 a.m. and talk about this show, I won't fucking know anything if I haven't had my coffee. So that's a very good point. That if you have some routines, bring those routines with you to the tournament or your club night or whatever. We talk a lot about in a competitive sense, but this is communicable to playing good games of Age of Sigmar in general.
Sure. And if there's anything that any of you take away from, grudge Andrew the first match in the morning, so that way he's playing at his worst. And if you see him with coffee, slap it out of his hand.
I haven't lost a grudge match yet, buddy. Oh no, I lost one to the Boy Wonder. Damn it! I didn't have coffee. I lost on deployment because I didn't have coffee. Galaxy brain. I'm just the beautiful mind all the time.
Well, I'm glad I could help you have that moment. But from my own personal experiences, good luck. Isaiah is very, very talented.
I beat him too, though. I beat him.
There you go.
Yeah,
I have not. Yeah. So
no, he's a very skilled player. He is leagues better than I was at his age. It's not even comparable. Not even close. I wasn't that good.
Also just a good guy, and
he's a great
also kid. Comes from a great family.
The ram
every
checks
single one of them
are
have you heard about our achievement system that we're trying to get instituted at tournament? Mm-hmm. Based on how many Ramsics are there, we'll have various different achievements.
Achievements unlocked.
Yeah, Ramsic Slayer for whoever defeats the most Ramsics at the tournament, or there can be only one for the Ramsic who defeats the most Ramsics.
I love it. I do think we need to have a You know what I'm going to do? It's not a secret anymore. I'm supposed to run a team tournament August, September next year.
Nice.
I'll be doing it in the same venue Brew City is in. And so I'm supposed to do that. I'll get on writing out a pack, and I'll actually start officially announcing it here pretty soon. I'm not going to admit defeat after my awesome four-person tournament, but I think I'm going to have like a ram check focused trophy. Like,
Yeah.
like maybe there could be only one, like, or the ram check slayer trophy or something like that. Like,
yeah. Yeah, we had a whole bunch of them. I'm sure Kyle.
Yeah, we'll network.
There was a friend of the Ramsix for games to them
oh yeah.
Actually, speaking of self-care, I would like to ask: do you mind if I step away for just a few minutes to use the restroom?
No, go ahead, man. It's fine.
All right, I will be right back, and we can pick.
Yeah, we'll pick back. I won't allow for dead air, so I'll keep talking to y'all. But Dr. Alex is gonna step away here for a moment. So the friend of Ramcheck, yeah, for gifting them the most games, gifting the most Ramchecks games. No, they are really good people. I'm supposed to be running this teams tournament or doubles. I'm leaning towards a doubles event next year. I think doubles I think it's a fun format. It goes in line with one of the things I firmly and strongly believe about being a community ambassador. I think it's a very approachable first tournament for people to go to is a doubles event. And we don't have many 2-day doubles events. Holy Havoc was fantastic. I felt inspired after walking away from that. So if I run it, then we try to get an odd number of people signed up, and then we can be the ringers, baby. So that would happen that way. Yeah. So I'm trying to run. I'm looking to set that up for September, August, September next year. And I've already looked into venues. I've priced it out. I know how many tables I can I know my target number of tables to make it liquid, quote unquote. So I'm going to aim for that. And if I get enough interest, I will go above the target number of tables because I have plenty of tables in terrain. Unlike last time, I've got a system. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. That'll be in Milwaukee. Milwaukee needs more tournaments. I love the city. I think there's a very good, strong gaming. I need the Predator handshake gif, just and like there's an explosion in the background. Yeah. So that's the plan next year. For doing a tournament, Milwaukee Mayhem. And then the next sort of couple topics we'll be talking about here is going to be burnout triggers and managing stress in a game. I want to see the 4 Catacross games. I might make it 1250 points just so you can see Nagash in a team game. I think that would be a lot of fun. Can I sponsor a trophy? Absolutely. Sponsorships welcomed. No, most people seem to push. Pardon me. Most people seem to push back on the notion of 1250. So we'll stick around 1,000. We'll find a more interesting. The Nagash and 3 Mortark game. Yeah. You mean most Tark? It better be fucking 1250. That's the superior point value for doubles. I mean, I'll have to put out feelers. I know what my sort of inner circle believes. I need to know what the wider demographic believes. I'm actually gonna have Mr. Tayrathi himself on here, and we're gonna talk. He had this really awesome take about tournaments that I want to investigate. Then 1250 is cool. Please stream it. Yeah, so I haven't thought about like coverage, but I think we'll have to do something. Between Haywo and I've got plenty of camera equipment. Do a feature table. I think that'll be nice. Second the motion. I don't know if I'll shoutcast it though. is the thing. I don't know. I've kind of moved away from that life. Import Scrivo. I could import Scrivo. We'll import Scrivo. Import Scrivo and Rob and Jacob Berry. All right, casual hitman. Enjoy your meal. Yeah, and that's my take, is that 1250 feels like a small army as opposed to half an army, but some people actually like engineering half an army with their partners half an army. So some people, I see it both ways. I have completed the red on my 20 more tech guard. Tomorrow they will be import you to be the shoutcaster. Oh, that's actually a great idea. You'd be a wonderful shoutcaster, Tristan. Red, gross. Who the fuck do you think you are, Brendan? I like red. Red's great. But, here, I guess, what do y'all think? And this isn't... I'm not a 40k guy, so I'm not asking about 40k. What do you think of the Mephiston model? He is sort of my namesake. Because I look at this, it's just stunning. And it's got like an alternate build. I guess they went off the more classic art, which is just great. I mean, obviously his power sword is the one that says badass motherfucker on it. Just BAMF on the side of it. So, it's a sweet model. Dante needed it more. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, Dante, the chapter master. Well, a lot of people think he should just be dead, finally. Smell the glove. Fucking, this is Spinal Tap, right? Yeah, it is a sweet model. And purple is fucking great, Smoochie, which is, I've seen your models are looking really, really good. I've got purple on my... Yeah, there's that alt build. Looks so good. Yeah, with the hand up. I would totally sculpt mine to have... Because there is a sanguine goblet or whatever artifact in old Blood Angels. I would totally sculpt mine to be holding it with the, for what profit is it to a man? Fucking have him do Dracula from Castlevania shit. It'll be great. Welcome back, Alex.
Just leave a severed arm with a whip at the feet or something like that.
Oh, yeah, like he's defeated Richter. Huh. Tribute. You steal men's souls. I love that game. Oh, it's so
great
good.
Game. In hindsight, I'm surprised they had any walls left after chewing on them that much.
Oh man, that game is excellent. It's Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of my absolute favorite games of all time. Incidentally, while I'm on the topic of video games, if you like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Bloodstained is every bit as good as you had hoped it would be. I can't think of the last time a video game I have wanted to see kickstarted has actually met my expectations and exceeded them.
Wow.
The way Bloodstained did. So awesome.
I'm working my way through Dark Souls 3, and then I'm going to be finishing up Blasphemous after that, which, as an ex-Catholic, playing Blasphemous is real interesting.
Oh,
real
man.
Interesting making my way through that game.
See, the Metroidvania is just a superior genre. Like, it's just and Blasphemous looks great. I'm gonna have to buy it. I tried to get a content creator copy. I did not. So I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way. But I haven't played it yet.
That game is definitely nightmare fuel. I would be a little careful about when you, but yeah, it's so far from what I've played, I've enjoyed it. Although I definitely in the wrong direction and picked the hardest of the possible boss fights I could start the game with. So maybe don't head north. Don't head up is what I'll say. Yeah. Try not heading up first.
Try not heading up first. I'll keep it in mind. So Alucard, real quick, this hot take, Smoochie. Alucard greater than any Belmont? Obviously.
Yeah, fair.
Alucard is one of the coolest characters of all time. Now, I remember Twilight came out, and the notion of pretty vampires made me retroactively hate all vampires throughout all the time. And then I like did the run real quick. I'm like, actually there's a lot of really sweet vampires. It's just Twilight that fucked it all up. And the Anne Rice novels. But Alucard from Castlevania is sweet. Alucard from Hellsing, also sweet.
Still have not seen Hellsing. I was definitely in the right generation for when that was super popular, but I just never got around to watching it.
Yeah, hashtag Mephisto's not a weeb. It's good. It obviously runs out of budget and rushes itself at the end. I guess they remade it, but I have no idea. I have no idea. But yeah, Alucard is great.
Yeah, and I do think because he shows up in some later games, playable character, but as just a character who's present and engages with you.
He's in Castlevania 3 or 4.
He's in that originally. Yeah, right. He was in there as a character you could play, but then he gets his own game
So he's
in the night.
Yeah,
but I think in some of the Game Boy Advance ones, he shows up as a character involved in the plot, but not a playable character.
Yeah, 3 is where he shows up. Yeah, yeah, and then the Netflix series is fantastic. I had forgotten how awesome he was until... Well, no, I hadn't forgotten. I had forgotten how much I was a fanboy for Alucard.
You got a reminder.
Until he showed up in the Netflix series. It was so good. But that's enough of this tangent. So we were talking about this sort of mental game of Age of Sigmar, the psychology of Sigmar, as it were. We also had burnout as sort of a separate topic. So how would you characterize burnout as different from mental fatigue in general?
I think burnout is probably more sort of what might happen if you chronically are experiencing that mental fatigue, where you start to reach a point where actually you find that you're not really enjoying the game, you're not really excited for parts of it, you're not really looking forward to it. It's starting to feel more like a chore than it is something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, that you feel positively towards. And maybe even just that. You're starting to have more negative feelings towards this thing that you love than positive feelings.
Okay, so this is more of a long-term situation where, I actually, to go personal with this, I experienced this a little bit around Midwest Meltdown, personally.
Yeah.
There was some external factors, one of them being the army I truly love, Legion of Nagash himself, being able to, I came into Age of Sigmar not expecting to be able to play my favorite guy, and, I was going to, and then I was rewarded for that decision, a few months later with the LON tome coming out, and I'm like, oh man, this is a love letter to me and telling me go ahead, keep playing Nagash. And so I had gotten that high of playing Nagash while he was a boogeyman, And I wasn't playing the cookie cutter list by any means, so people I felt had a more positive games with me than if I had 60 Grimghast Reapers or Nagash plus Vlazda. Well, there's some weird ass builds out there that were really oppressive if you didn't have the tools to deal with them. But I had a period of playing Nagash when Clowncar was still around, so I didn't go into it thinking I was this unstoppable boogeyman the way people who just picked him up in AOS 2.0 did, right? So this is my favorite army. Then it gets nerfed, and it's not just that it's nerfed. It's that I have to take my entire list kind of back to the drawing board if I want to keep playing with Nagash. So I had a little bit of this indecision about what to play, and then my games weren't feeling as rewarding because I wasn't getting the same highs of getting to play Nagash. The list, I experimented a lot with Death March because kind of at the back of my head I'd already had Death March kind of ready to go for the GHB because I knew even at the time Nagash wasn't the best build. I didn't think in especially as DOK were showing up, and Flesh Eater Courts was about to come out, and all these other armies that were just natural predators for Nagash himself.
Yeah.
And so like I had these expectations that kind of didn't get met anymore. I had this sort of disconnect between my army and me, and then I found myself, I'm just going to the events for the community, to see my friends, and like I was almost dreading playing the games themselves.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a great example. Just that transition you feel from, this is a thing that I love and I feel and I can't wait to go and engage, to, oh, I can't really do the thing that I love anymore. And I'm trying to change and looking for ways to change, but I'm not really finding any that are catching my attention, to, I'm actually now really dreading going forward and playing this, or I don't foresee myself enjoying going forward and doing this. And that's that sort of slope that you wind up on. And when you reach that point, you might be feeling burnt out.
So how do we deal with burnout? I have some ideas on how I dealt with it.
Sure.
But how, like, I guess, what's your perspective? What's your take?
Yeah. I think in some ways managing burnout is actually a little bit like depression. You know, when you realize that you're in this state, that you need to start taking a step back and trying to focus attention elsewhere. Because if you just keep doing what you've been doing, you might power through it. More likely than not, you're not, because it's going to just take more and more energy to go and do it. So what I might say to people at that point is start to focus on other aspects of the hobby, because the hobby has many aspects to it. And so if you're a competitive tournament gamer and you're feeling like right now there's no competitive army you look forward to playing, well, then maybe not necessarily step away, but shift gears. Maybe now's the time to brush up on some hobby techniques that you've been meaning to develop, learning how to use green stuff, learning how to highlight, or learning wet blending or something like that. Shift your focus onto another aspect of the hobby and start fresh there. And maybe after you focus on that for a while, it'll take some of the pressure off to get reconnected with that thing that you feel like is what you want. Maybe start trying to do some conversions, or try to play some wacky lists. Try to step away from the I need to go and win to, can I win with this random thing that I've created? Right. And maybe that just takes some of the pressure off. Also, slowing down. Sometimes when we're burnt out, we try to rapidly find some way to reignite the spark or feel like we're getting back into it. Slow yourself down. You don't have to. It's a hobby. You can step away for a while. You can take a break. Go do something else that you enjoy for a little bit, and then come back and see if you have a fresh pair of eyes.
In my case, it was playing tons of Sekiro.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Like a shit ton of Sekiro.
Right.
Trying to like level a weird build in Bloodborne because I love that game.
Yeah, well. There you go.
So I did, and then I stayed attached to the community, and I focused a little bit more on video games and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I routinely, after a big tournament, I probably won't touch a model for, a few days or a week or so. And then when I do start to get back into it, probably with something small, like, some hobby backlog or something like that, just because there's so much that goes into prepping for a tournament and so much that goes into actually playing through one, that by the time I'm done, like, I barely want to unpack, let alone start, like, writing new lists sometimes.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, no, I actually, like, I keep getting a lot of advice, because I don't know if you've noticed this, Chat Gang and Alex, but I've been making a lot of RantCasts on what's supposed to be a weekly show is, twice or 3 times weekly, or 5 times weekly this week. And a lot of, like, other content creators are hazarding me against content creator burnout. They're saying pace myself. And I think that's very valuable advice. I think part of it is knowing your limits too. Like, you have to self-diagnose. You have to run some self-diagnostics and understand your own personal limits, whether it's content creating or tournament play or throwing yourself too heavy into the hobby. Like, you start to feel like it's a chore to finish painting 20 more tech guard in this time period. That can spoil you for the hobby enjoyment, right? Like,
I literally just saw someone on Twitter saying that they were selling their because they, banged out 20 or 40 grots of it and realized they had to do 100
Oh man.
said like, no, I can't do this.
So they're selling their Gloomspite Gitz army because they hit that. Like they just.
Yeah, they just like couldn't in any way see themselves looking forward to 100.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think knowing your limits is important.
No.
In terms of RantCast, I'm aware of my limits. So I've churned out the content, and I'm going to give myself a break. In a little bit, it's coming down the pipeline.
No.
But like being aware of your limits and allowing yourself a cooldown or a reset period is very important, I think.
Yeah, and I think one thing, like touching on RantCast or doing something like this and how that plays into it, connecting with people who are excited for the hobby and being around them and their energy.
Yeah.
And trying to focus on that, not in comparison to yourself, but just to try to support them in their excitement.
Right.
Like I had a tournament recently that I withdrew from because I just realized that I was over, not during the tournament. I withdrew before the tournament.
Yeah.
I would have felt bad if I had gone in for 3 games. It was like, I don't know.
Yeah, fuck you.
But I just realized, the day before I was overwhelmed. I was stressed out. I wasn't feeling well. I just wasn't in any shape that I was going to go and have a good time. And I certainly wasn't going to have my opponent have a good time.
Right.
And so I wound up withdrawing from it. And actually, I realized it was the right decision when I thought about that option and then felt great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was speaking to one of my friends who's going to the tournament. I was speaking to Christian about it, and he said, "Oh, I'm still planning to go, but I was mostly going because I wanted to support you because you seemed really excited about the army you were going to play." Mm-hmm. And so trying to look for things like that. Are you going to the tournament to win, or are you going because you want to be there and support your friend as they try out their new army, or right. They're picking up some new thing, or we've had some talks about like getting together to do an airbrush day to eliminate airbrush fear. And so trying to look for those aspects of the community you can directly tap into. If you're not feeling the passion, can you tap somebody else's and support them for a while?
That's a really great take, actually. Mm-hmm. Sort of supporting others and their passion can be a real way for you to reconnect to your own. That's one of the things. Like making RantCast has been one of the best decisions I've personally made. Like certainly in my internet career, I suppose. This is a passion project for me. Mm-hmm. And that keeps the joie de vivre, the zest for life going. To be able to talk with great guests like yourself and the chat here. So yeah, I think that's an excellent take on burnout. Anything else you want to add to it, or I think that's...
I would say, just as a final point, never be afraid to step away from it. It doesn't mean you have to completely disconnect from the community. It doesn't mean you have to sell all your art.
Yeah.
But take a break. It's a hobby. You're allowed to step away and take breaks. If it's becoming all consuming, if it's leading you to have more negative sentiment than positive sentiment, go do something else that you enjoy for a while. Mm-hmm. And remember, you've always got people around you. So worst case scenario, focus on them for a while. Oh. The hobby's not going anywhere. It's been around for what, 25, 30 years?
About.
So you'll survive if you take a break and you miss a few books. Chances are you've got that friend who will be like, let me tell you about everything you missed. Let me get you caught up to speed.
Right. Or who knows, maybe there'll be a really great release that just like boom and you're locked in again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this coming year we're probably going to have a lot of those.
Yeah. STD, actually, for instance.
Yeah, Slaves to Darkness. I'm looking forward to that. I know a lot of people. Yeah. Hopefully Seraphon is finally going to get some love. There's a players who will be happy. I know I'm in the Shadow Elf group. I was talking to Jake about this, how we're like, we don't care if there's a 6-foot statue of Malarian they release. We're pre-ordering that thing when it comes out.
Yeah. That's so, OBR hit me that exact way, and I want other people to get that. I went on record. I'm like, I don't care if it sucks. I'm ordering the model because it's great. Like, I don't care if this army's bad. I think to watch people get excited about things in the community really is one of the things I love is seeing people, that wheel will keep turning. One day there will be the release that you love. I've personally been fortunate that I had an LON tome and then OBR this year. But when Night Haunt came out, I wasn't like, yay, Night Haunt. You know, I was just like, okay, I'm happy for people who like spooky ghosts. Not my thing.
Right, yeah.
You know, IDK, Fish Elves, not my thing. But hey, man, there are people who love their IDK armies, and you know,
right, yeah.
Gitz. I could
Japan,
almost
literally the entire country of Japan loves IDK.
Right. I could almost really be into Gloomspite Gitz as an army. Like I think like some of the models are fantastic, but I'm like, I'm just not a goblin player. At the end of the day, I just like I know that I'm not. But knowing that they have a formidable healthcare plan package,
right? That they have comprehensive mental health benefit is an attractive option. And honestly, surprisingly, I think Destruction as a faction is maybe the sort of like refresher faction.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're really feeling burnt out on what you're doing, maybe you should go play Ironjaws. Every Ironjaws player that I have met seems a great time.
Yeah, they
or
really
go play Trolls, go play Squigs. Like even if they don't do anything, you might actually just be really happy about it.
You're right about IJ players.
No, they are just a.
I've always said IJ players are IJ players. Like you just know an orc player is an orc player. Dwarves are also like that to a lesser extent, but like an orc player is an orc player. It's like they're playing their own separate game.
Yeah, they are, and they're enjoying it, which is
no
idea what it is.
Yeah. All right. So then we're just kind of gonna round out with we got triggers and managing stress in a game. So that's kind of like our last little avenue to explore here with the sort of the mental game, the psychology of Sigmar. So I guess what would you like to say about managing stress and triggers?
I think we've actually touched on a fair amount of.
Yeah.
Again, triggers I think really is honestly just another word we tilt here. You know, if we were going really hard in terms of mental health lexicon and things like that, we usually reserve triggers for things that are like bringing out really strong negative reactions in you. If there is something like that in the game, then probably good for you to know that and try to do what you can to manage it. The one thing that I would say is that from the research we've done on anxiety, there's sort of 3 different ways that you can respond to something that makes you anxious. So this will be sort of my catch-all response here. You can avoid the thing, which reinforces the anxiety. You'll still be afraid of it, but for the moment, you'll feel a little bit better. Not a great long-term solution, but it's the one we usually default to. It's what our body usually prepares us to do. You can seek reassurance from other people. You'll feel a little bit better in the moment, but it'll fade really quickly. And then, again, you won't be any less afraid of the thing long-term. You'll just feel a little bit better in the short run. And the third, the one that leads to lasting change, is confront the thing. Either be there and realize it's actually not as fear-provoking as you thought it was, or that it does provoke fear, but you can handle it and you can get through it. So if you know there's something in the game that stresses you out, something that you do find triggering or that brings out a strong reaction in you, and you want to be able to get past that, you might want to do practice against it specifically. Intentionally expose yourself to that in practice games, so that way you can learn how to overcome it, or at least that it becomes a known quantity and causes less of a strong reaction in you.
Places of Arcane Power last year was exactly that for me. I was on an army list that was supposed to kind of auto win that battle plan, but I played against my friend's 1-drop Sylvaneth army a ton, which means he's got the edge in that matchup. So I just played it a lot against different armies, and then I didn't care when I saw that in a tournament pack.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but it wasn't fully a trigger, but every time I would get a pit in my stomach when I saw Places of Arcane Power in a pack. I got this sinking feeling. I'm like, I would almost get defeated by that before I even started playing.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example. And I'm sure, you played Beasts of Chaos, I played Stormcast for a year. How do you feel when Total Commitment pops up in a pack? It always does. You're like, why do you hate me, tournament organizer? What is your deal?
To be fair, Beasts of Chaos is my vacation army, so I don't have that strong feeling like I do with my primary death armies.
Sure.
So it's not quite as bad for me, but just as a tournament organizer in general, I kind of hate the idea of saying, hey, your army's thing, Like, I don't like the idea of a battle plan that just says you don't get to do the thing that your army says you should do. That's
because
just,
I'm paying points for something that I literally.
yeah, that's triggering in a different way for
Right.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that's another example. Like if you know as soon as you see that your heart's going to sink and you're not going to that game, well, you've got a few options. You can either, play it, get a bunch of practice in so you know what to do in that situation, or start actually trying to change the situation. Start trying to say to tournament organizers, hey, I see that you have this battle plan and it actually really discourages me from coming to the event. Consider not using it in the future. Here's some similar ones that I've played that had a similar impact on my army, but just felt better to play. Or write a letter to your senator or congressman. I mean, maybe that'll help too.
Yeah, they'll change stuff. In Age of Sigmar. No, I mean this is sort of relevant whenever there's a boogeyman army in the meta, because I think they are triggering, and not in the deeply emotional the official sense of what a trigger is, but they are sort of there is a sort of comparable triggering effect. Like, I see the comment I hate seeing is, I refuse to play against Skaven because they're busted. That they're doing, one of those three. They're avoiding it, right?
Yeah, and if you decide that there is some army out there that causes you such a negative play experience, that is so, like, emotionally taxing on you, that you simply cannot actually bear to play it, okay, all right. Then you concede the game, you let your opponent know that, you wish them well in the tournament, and you walk off and you take a 3-hour break. All right, there you go. Hopefully nothing winds up like that, and maybe if you're feeling up to it, challenge yourself. Find a friend who plays that, or someone you've met at tournaments who plays that army, and get some practice games in, and try to see if you are able to develop strategies against it. There's always going to be stuff that's busted and just doesn't feel good to play against, but at least knowing that you have something you can do will help you to feel better when you come up against it. Or, again, if you really feel that negatively about it and you want to concede and walk away from the game, all right, that's your prerogative. Take a 3-hour break. Do something to make yourself feel better.
Right.
Relax for a while.
Right. Yeah. And then also write your congressman about Slaanesh and Skaven.
Yeah. No, but seriously, write people about Slaanesh.
You can, and that's the thing, is like, Slaanesh, is it ideal? No. I mean, I think we get it.
Right, yeah. Slaanesh is kind of the dead horse at this point.
It's a dead horse to beat. Yeah. Like, so that's not, the take here isn't like panning Slaanesh, but I think there's constructive ways of confronting Slaanesh. And that's what I kind of like. That's what I speaking. Go ahead.
And speaking of burnout here and treating other players, if, let's say, you've been to a bunch of tournaments lately, you keep running into Slaanesh, you keep losing games against them, or Skaven, or Flesh Eater Courts, whatever it is.
Whatever your boogeyman is, yeah.
Whatever your boogeyman is, and you're feeling really run down, try not to take that out on the people who are actually excited to play those armies. Remember, just because they're having a good time, or you're not having as good of a time, that doesn't necessarily mean that one or the other of you invalidate each other.
Yeah.
Try as much as you can to let them have their fun, and then try to find a way for you to actually enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to find that, again, take a break. It's okay.
Yeah. Perfect. And then stress management is something I think we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just take care of yourself. Know your limits. Find, get your reps in. Give yourself some mental shortcuts and mental breaks. So a lot of that stuff, I think, is just, that all comes into like managing stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and try to find, like you said, find shortcuts for yourself. Try to find those little things that just make your play a little bit more efficient, so you don't have to think about it.
Player aids, actually.
Yeah, player aids. There you go. Fantastic. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, get good player aids. The thing is you might not know perfect player aids until you've played the army and get a functional understanding of what can help you. Like, movement trays, for instance. I got one set of movement trays because I knew I needed them. They didn't fully fit my needs because I found piling out of doing a pile-in from the particular set of movement trays I had got weren't the best. So now I have newer movement trays that are a lot better. But I didn't know that until I had gone through that. So there are plenty of guides on the internet, talking heads like myself that'll tell you some great tips. That's not this episode, though. But yeah, there are player aids. Don't be afraid to get yourself player aids. I think some people have a faux pas that you got to do it all on your own. It would be ridiculous to be like, oh, I don't use a tape measure because I don't lean on that crutch of tape measuring. Like, player aids are fine. They're a part of the game. Don't be...
If it gets you to the end of round 5 and it's not illegal by the tournament standards, then do yourself a favor.
Yeah, don't worry about having tokens. I've heard people like, oh, I don't want to use tokens or reminder sheets, like an AOS reminders sheet, because I should memorize everything. I was like, okay. Here's the best thing to do is to get like a reminder sheet or a cheat sheet or whatever, and use it so much you no longer need to use it. That's where you want to be.
Right.
But then you can look over and go, hey, that's right. I'm not forgetting anything. Tokens. Go ahead.
And if you're not playing enough games in between tournaments or in between events that you're able to get that knowledge ingrained in, it's okay. Use the reminder sheet or pick something to focus on so that way you do get that part memorized, and then use the reminder sheet for the rest. And keep in mind, some stuff is just unwieldy. It's just not necessarily designed in a streamlined way. Like, I know Rob from the Honest Wargamer was talking about using like clickers to track horror points. And, I've arranged dice in a certain way. And there's lots of Tzeentch game aids in particular. So use that stuff or come up with your own. There's no shame in it. Just being more efficient helps you focus on engaging with your opponent. And that's what leads to positive play experiences.
Right. One of the things I do for like Nagash, I know he's got 8 spells a turn. I actually roll 8 separate sets of dice. So I roll 8, set the dice off to the side. Spell 1, boom, 2 dice, set them down. Spell 2, boom, set them down. And I do that with just 8 sets of dice.
It's not a bad idea, actually. So that's a really great idea.
Oh, how many spells am I? Because I used to do like tally marks. I used to do like other system, like flipping over cards, so I knew I'd cast that spell. Actually, the dice just work. It's cleaner. I'm not going into my bag to grab something else. It's just like, here we go. Boom, roll it, move to the next die. Because I'm just using dice. And then I go, and then when I have to do my mental checkup, where I'm like, okay, which spells did I cast? I go, oh yeah, I rolled a 7 on this, I rolled an 8 on it. And then I can just, they become their own visual aid. So that's a technique I use for like managing Nagash. I think, Nagash, sorry, ABB, always be on brand. That's how I manage Nagash. So find the thing is you're going to find things that work better for the armies you play. Be conscious about it, and you can make strides. And look in on what other people are doing, because something that my dice technique works really well for me. Maybe you have the card printed Magic the Gathering cards, and flipping them upside down is the best technique for you. But I found with a mind toward efficiency, 8 dice or a set of 8 dice, just boom, 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 one, through all 8 spells. Like that's been a revelation for me in my play.
And this is where things like the WhatsApp group for your army, or potentially even the TGA thread for your army, really helpful. Just keep in mind, you're going to get all types who are chiming in there. But if you go in saying like, hey, I'm excited to play this army, I'm trying to get more efficient, anyone have any tips about what they do, chances are you're going to get nothing but constructive, useful help. I think I'm in the Tzeentch WhatsApp, and I've yet to see someone come in with that and instead of getting like a whole bunch of links to different things or suggestions, have someone just be like, oh, just play better. It's like, we don't quite have that kind of community, and those people are fewer and farther between. So go ask for that help. You'll likely get it. And if nobody knows anything, well, hopefully you all can brainstorm about it.
Right. Yeah. Counters, wound counters. I've actually, they've won me over, wound counters, because dice just get bumped and moved around all the time. A counter is just really useful. And tokens for marking spell buffs, debuffs, and stuff like that, I think are really, really useful. The one thing I've noticed is tokens that say the name of the spell are a lot less useful to me than if a spell does a -1 to hit, having something that just says -1 to hit on it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're cutting out a mental step. You're going... I cast Overwhelming Dread on you. I know that Overwhelming Dread is -1 to hit and -1 bravery. But, then I say Overwhelming Dread to you. I've got the shorthand version in my brain. You don't have that yet, necessarily, because you don't play my army. So I go, boom, -1 hit, -1 bravery. Now we both know and we've both taken that mental shortcut now to go -1 to hit, -1 bravery. Mental shortcuts and things like that are very useful in this game. That's why I'm a proponent for these player aids that some people are like, oh no man, you're weak if you use player aids. You should be powerful and have everything memorized. It's like even the best players in the world use player aids and they make mistakes.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. That it's a bullshit mindset. Don't buy into it. Externalize your thinking. Give your memory and your brain a break. It can only handle so much. So you're not doing yourself any favors by holding yourself.
Yeah. By holding yourself to an unrealistic expectation, I think you cut out there on the tail end. Yeah.
Unrealistic expectation or standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do things to help yourself. If anyone tells you you're wrong for doing things to help yourself, fuck them.
Yeah. Well, necrolepsy. Are you sure that dice was an 8? Like, and then just like, yeah, I know it was an 8. Really? Because I thought it was a 6. We should do a roll off. Like, I fucking hate that. Just get counters, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or something that I've done before. I've got a bunch of counters now, but if you're playing an army, you're still getting square bases, you can put your dice on those, and then they'll be less likely to roll around. Yeah. Or turn those into counters. Just slap a little bit of primer on them, and then paint whatever you want the thing to be on it. There you go.
I like the little, I've seen these little dice holder things, like these individual dice holder things where you like put the die inside of them. I thought those are pretty useful. So it's like a little, just a little like a sawed off pyramid, you know, where like the top's been chopped off, and then you put it
right. Yeah.
3D printed, like people 3D print them and stuff, or you could, I'm sure there's plenty of sites that probably sell something similar, and then you just put your D6 in there so it's not going to get bumped or shifted around, and now you've created your own counter. Another advantage to something like that type of a player aid is you're not digging into your bag for something else the way you are with a counter. You know, it's just you're always rolling dice. It's dice. You're turning the die into the counter in a manner that's not going to become a liability down the stretch of the game. Stuff gets jostled.
There's lots of different solutions. And like you said, you practice, you try some out, and then...
you find what works for you, and then whatever is going to save you that mental attrition.
Absolutely.
That's the technique that you want to go with. Whatever works for you, right? So that's... I think that we pretty well wrapped on the sort of the psychologist Sigmar, both the sort of metaphoric fun side of things, and then just the sort of more useful. Is there any lasting points? Have you figured out what Skaven is? Is there anything you want to revisit or any?
I think Skaven I'll have to give some thought to.
Yeah, we'll look for this.
I did want to touch on just very brief. I did get a couple questions from Christian that I wanted to touch on, so he didn't think I ignored him. He has a serious question and a not so question. The not so serious one, that in the field of psychology, we very strongly feel that you should not sleep with your clients. Every class I have ever taken found a way to shoehorn that in, just as a reminder, do not sleep with your clients. And so he said, so I understand that about psychology, but what about Warhammer and sleeping with your opponents?
I see.
I can't provide a professional perspective. I'd say probably not the best idea unless you're two consenting adults who agree and decide to pursue it down the line. But then again, I also do couples therapy. So, if you start arguing about it, let me know.
If I can, for a moment, I had a very famous fight with one of my ex-girlfriends. So I obviously play AOS a lot. I talked a lot about video games and RPGs tonight. On the rung of the latter rungs of my nerdery, GMing and tabletop RPGs is very high. It's like Age of Sigmar, video games, GMing. They're all like in contention. It's a really weird looking ladder.
And I'm thinking this might be an infamous. The GM is dating one of the party members.
Yes. So I had a girlfriend, and she was becoming introduced to tabletop RPGs. Most of the RPGs she had done, or most of the role playing she had done, was like forum-based role-playing, and World of Warcraft was popular, so like being on an RP server in World of Warcraft, but she had never actually played a tabletop RPG. So then, me loving tabletop RPGs, I taught her to play, and I said the line rather famously, when I'm DMing or when I'm GMing, I am your game master, I'm not your boyfriend. Huge fight. Huge fight. When I said it, like, so it did what it tends to, what comments like that tend to do, is very pernicious for her. It settled in somewhere in her psyche, and it lingered, and it didn't come up for several weeks or several sessions. And then one time, just down the line, something innocuous happened in the game. I don't even remember what it was. And she looked at me and just rolled her eyes. And it wasn't like I killed her character. It was nothing major. Nothing. It wasn't even like... And she just rolled her eyes and she said, "Oh, right, because you're my GM right now, not my boyfriend." And, like, it was one of those things where it was just like someone had slammed on the brakes, you know, and you heard the tires screech and just, like... And I'm like... And then I go back... I maintain professional GM mode, and I'm like... And and I pass it off. And then we finish the session, and then that night... Probably the fight that ended our relationship, you know, in a sort of butterfly effect manner, like, down the line.
Right.
Because... when you fight about something, you so very rarely, I have found, are fighting about the thing that starts the fight. There's something else.
Especially if you're getting to that more tense argument level. Yeah, you're probably both did it a while back. But so on the serious note, if you and your are both involved in a hobby, especially one that's a competitive one, try to remember that your relationship is important to you. You know, try not to extend beyond good-natured ribbing, and be open and transparent with each other about where the lines are and when you might be starting to feel like, oh, that's enough of the teasing. I would prefer not to take it.
So I need to dial back crushing Lulu, my partner, in Monopoly and all other board games so thoroughly, probably.
Unless she would then be upset with you for changing the approach you're taking, because she's... So, you know, you have to know your audience.
Yeah, know your audience, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Christian actually... go on.
Oh, I have his actual question here. Was that what you were supposed to...
Yeah, that's what I was going to transition to. Yeah.
So he mentioned that, especially as people start to get older and they're still involved in hobbies, and nowadays with the rise of the accessibility of video games and some other things, he's noticed that, especially through tabletop gaming, whether it's Warhammer, whether it's D&D or things like that, it seems like that's an easier way to make friends and make some of these lasting relationship connections than through things like, you know, playing games with each other. Not that doesn't happen, but that it seems like it happens quicker or easier. And did I have any thoughts on why that is? And I think actually there's a few contributing factors here that might make this just a good format for getting to know people and getting a deeper relationship. So things like small groups are generally much easier to interact with than bigger groups. And even one-on-one can have a little bit of pressure to it. Sometimes just having a few people there can diffuse that. But yeah, small groups are generally easier, especially for introverts. The more people there are, the more anyone who tends to be introverted is going to start to feel overwhelmed rather than energized. So that might be part of it. Mm-hmm. Having a shared topic and like a semi-structured interaction makes it a lot easier for you to always have something you can fall back to. You can always talk about what's happening in the game. You always know that, you know, kind of what the next thing is that you can be talking about. So you can deviate and experiment as you're getting to know this person, or you can always focus back in on the shared activity and have something readily available to talk to, and that's always helpful.
Yeah, if I may just kind of...
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things I've found, so, like, Tristan was in the chat here, Frank and stuff like that, and certainly the Pants Mafia, like, we have the common interest, Age of Sigmar, that fallback topic. But the stronger bonds I've made is the people who I start playing the game with, and then I find that one Venn diagram circle overlap beyond Age of Sigmar. And that's when I really start to, like, make some lasting friendships with people. So, you know, we've had just some fascinating, weird conversations, and I love minutia and trivia and weird conversations. So I'm like, this is a guy I can talk to about the weird stuff, you know, and you know, Kyle's devotion to death is itself like its own separate, like, quirk, you know, and
yeah, if you want to talk about why Nagash is the best, Kyle's your man.
Yeah, he's my guy. Yeah.
How many chaos spawn is too many chaos spawn? Then maybe I can feel.
Yeah. How many is that? Yeah. So it's like, you know, and Tristan, it's NBA, and Frank, it's been actually like video games and fighters, and so like I've had these that secondary layer that extends beyond just talking about the game in that structured manner to now you're like freestyling and having fun talking about like either adjacent topics or even separate ones entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think part of why people make lasting friendships from school, and it's because there's a sort of a structured setting and a structured way you socialize with one another, and so you always have some back to it. When we're adults, we're out on our own, we're more independent. There's so many different options, so many ways in which you could meet or engage with a person. It's actually overwhelming. It's the diner menu that has every single food option compared to the hole in the wall that serves 3 things.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? I did kind of jump in on you there.
Oh no, that's fine. I could talk constantly if you didn't stop me. So by all means, feel free. The last one I would say is generally our community.
Our community. You cut out there a moment.
Oh, sorry. Can be pretty positive, and if you're finding that you're experiencing some negativity in one area, you can sort of transition into other layers of the hobby and try to reconnect with the positive aspect. You know, if everybody is ranting about Slaanesh, well, maybe go hang out with the hobby people for a while and see, you know, what new techniques they're working on, or, you know, there's probably now an 89th way of highlighting something and that everyone's very excited about.
That's utterly fascinating, and that's actually an angle I hadn't considered, is that there are sort of these partitions even within the community where you can like, okay, man, this is getting too heavy. I can't read the 5th post about why Slaanesh needs to be banned today. I need to go talk to like, you know, somebody else about something else. Isn't this other army really sweet? Or yeah, hey, let's look at these cool models. So yeah, those partitions are actually really cool that help the community. I think bonds stay a little bit stronger. That's a great take.
Absolutely. I play Stellaris, which is a grand strategy game by Paradox Interactive. They make Crusader Kings, and lately there's been a lot of community discussion. The game has a lot of it just doesn't run.
There's been a lot of disenfranchisement, and then what was the second?
There's games just having a lot of performance issues, and so the game just doesn't run well in the late game. To the point that people are saying like, are questioning whether or not it's even playable. And so if you're only having those discussions constantly, it's pretty easy to get into a negative loop and start to not really enjoy this thing you like as much. But there's some room there to engage in other layers. Go spend time with the people who are trying to, you know, crunch the numbers on what ships are the best, and, you know, can we make, you know, Strikecraft useful, or are they totally useless? Things like that. Right. So trying to look for those other layers where you can engage, where maybe there's more positivity, or you're just interested in touching base with
that passion. It's that passion connection again.
Yeah. So I think that is an element that makes it easier to form some friendships too. There's multiple different avenues you can connect with people on. It taps into different facets, and generally people try to be supportive of one another. So, you know, if people are being supportive and like what you're doing and want to spend time with you, you're probably going to become friends.
Right. And then I actually have a question for you as well. So I saw Christian. There might be some more on the internet now, but so I don't know if I pitched it or I mentioned it or took it for granted without and didn't outline it. But you are part of the Pants Mafia.
Correct. Yes, I am.
Okay. So do you want to just real quick give us the synopsis of the Pants Mafia, maybe an origin story briefly, and then I can ask my question, so that it's not so much an inside joke anymore, and then the audience can be along for it.
Sure. Yeah. So I moved to.
You moved to Chicago. I'm sorry, you cut out again.
Oh, sorry that I've been cutting out so much. So I apologize to the audience as well.
Yeah.
I moved to Chicago a few years back and met. You know, I knew one person here. They introduced me to a D&D group, and so met a bunch of people from there, including Christian Weir, our friendly Australian expat. Yeah. And he learned that I was familiar with Warhammer, was playing Total War Warhammer, but had never really played the tabletop game. And so he said to me, you know, hey, I play. I'm, you know, deep in the community. Do you want to come and try it out and see if you like it? And so that's how I wound up getting started, right around when Caradron came out. And then along the way, we wound up talking to Kyle Knapp, another member of it, and he had played 40K back in the day, but hadn't picked anything up in a long time. And we showed him AOS, showed him the different armies, and he got attached to Death, and now is a huge fan of Death armies. So that kind of started it up. Now Christian already had the Twitter handle Maximum Pants, and he has his own story about how that got started. I like to think it's because he always takes the most ridiculous choice when presented with all possible choices in a game.
Right.
And so Kyle, being very focused on his own comfort, decided to be Minimum Pants.
Right.
And I decided that as a counterpoint between the two, I would be Moderate Pants.
Okay. All right. So one of my favorite stories is what Dome, when you guys were in a team event, and he's like, you're the effing, what is it? You're the effing Christian Wear Club. Or
yeah, the Christian effing Weirs. Yeah.
Yeah, the Christian effing Weirs Club, and you came up with the Pants Mafia. So my question then, and I think Tanya's probably an honorary Pants Mafia member.
Yeah, we have several honorary members. Tanya's definitely one of them, and also credit and shout out to Tanya. When I was recovering from Holy Havoc, like sitting in the chair, back was hurting, whole body was aching. That was right after Cities of Sigmar came out, and I was feeling kind of down about the Darkling Coven side of things.
Yeah,
and
we didn't get a whole lot of love. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a really good talk about just like how we would make them work, and that kind of led me to feeling like, oh, okay, I've got some options here. There's some good stuff here. So credit to Tanya for consistently just being sort of a positive influence in the community.
Yeah, she's a fantastic community member. The whole Pants Mafia and extended Pants Mafia family are in my mind absolute paragons of what this hobby is, and so I'm really pleased that you're on. We didn't talk about this ancillary topic I've wanted to talk to you about for a while, which is list science. So I got to have you back on for a list science episode.
It's a little late. We could definitely come back to that later.
We'll have to come back to the list science episode.
I will just briefly. I will read the title of a list as a teaser. And so one of the ones that I will talk to people about at some point is called "Do You Have a Flag?" The Tzeentch Zangor Totem Love Story.
I love it. And you, of course, were there for my journey into the cock meta, or the cockatrice meta. So
yes, we did work on the cock list, the maximum cock
list. How many cocks is too many cocks for one list? But my question then is actually regarding the Pants Mafia. What is a moderate amount of pants, if you were to quantify it? Not decision making per se. What would a moderate amount of pant be? Is that like a shants, or is it khaki? Like what is a moderate amount of pant?
No, I think khakis are a pant choice. If you're thinking about volume, then I imagine maximum pants would be like heavy duty cargo pants. So I guess mine would just be regular cargo pants, or like something like that. Minimum, of course, is
Speedo.
Bikini Speedo, Speedo. Right? That so yeah, I guess we're in that sort of like cargo short, khaki pants, like business casual when you're a lower man on the pole kind of thing. Nothing super exciting necessarily. Pants that have shrunk in the wash probably would fit as a moderate pant.
At a moderate pant? See, I don't think jeans are moderate pant. They're not maximum pant, but they are above a moderate amount of pant, because jeans tend to be a little heavier.
Maybe skinny jeans are a moderate pants.
Or like the skinny jeans like that are made out of
tapered leg pants.
Yeah. So that was my questions. I really wanted to know what a moderate amount of pant is. All right.
I think it could also be, are they still in style anymore? Like bell bottoms, they're probably a moderate pant in a lot of ways.
That's a moderate pant.
Maybe. Yes. Anyway, that's my answer.
Daisy Duke's minimum amount of pants.
Yes, very much a minimum pants. Talk to Kyle. Kyle will help you out on the Daisy.
As a follow-up question, could the Pants Mafia perhaps at one tournament show up in their relevant amount of pant for me personally?
I wouldn't be surprised if we already have, but yes, we could definitely plan for that.
I mean, the really important part of this is that Kyle has to be a Daisy Dukes or a Speedo.
Right. Which then we raise the question of, are you sure you want this? Are you really sure that you want this?
Do I ever?
Do I? Yeah. Which means I think I need to shrink a pair of yoga pants in order to prepare for this.
Yeah, there you go.
That might be the moderate pants that you're getting here.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So shameless self-promotion time. Like, what do you wanna shout out?
Sure. So as always, credit to my fellow Pants Mafia members, Christian Weir, for just always being, positive influence in the community, always enthusiastic, for getting me introduced to the hobby, and for trying to stay upbeat when I was like, Blackguard, what faction are they in? They're good, right? And not just being like, maybe.
I mean, he'll shoot you straight when it comes to it too.
He will, yeah.
Like he'll still love goofy crap and like fully endorse you playing goofy crap, but he still shoots it straight.
Right. When you tell him, no, I'm committed to this.
Yeah.
All right. we'll make it work.
Yeah.
And then also to Kyle, of course, our fellow of the trio in the Pants Mafia, for also unbridled enthusiasm and just generally being a good person who drives me nuts with some of the things he would like to do. Kyle. Gun haulers. No, they are not good. Do not put them in your lists. And also, Christian, my Drukhari conversions will be great when I finally get around to doing them, which may be a year from now. It may be 10 years from now, but they will be excellent.
Man,
Hobby shade me.
I freaking love you. I freaking love you. I love you guys, man. Oh, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Of course, happy to. Thanks for having me.
And if people wanna at you on Twitter, how would they do that? One more time.
I am at Moderate Pants. So all one phrase, no underscores or anything like that. Just at Moderate Pants. Feel free to reach out to me with anything, and I hope everyone enjoyed. And if you have any more burning questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to field them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Pants Mafia in chat. Thank you, Kyle, for holding it down for them in chat there. Smoochie, thanks for toughing it out to the end. Anyone else watching back on the VOD, thank you for tuning in. Remember, subscribes are free on YouTube. Do those. I'm trying to get to 1,000 for reasons. And then obviously subscribe on all the other stuff. You know what to do. This is the internet. It's not.
You'll figure it out. We trust all of you to figure out how the internet.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.